What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I dropped 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go! Go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You are watching 40 Days and 40 Nights. We are talking all things sports. We're talking all things pop culture. We got music in the show today. We got wrestling in the show today. We have Marvel news in the show today. This is going to be a fun show. This show is probably going to be the most EJ show we've had because, like I said before, I'm really excited about this project. We're doing 40 Days, 40 Nights on New Generation Media, where we're going to be talking all things I love. Obviously, it's a sports center show, and there are plenty of sports topics to get to. This topic run down a little bit more of the bizarre. I mean, the earlier show, if you wanted to get a scoop on what we feel like is going on with the NFC and AFC title games haven't happened already, and the recaps on that. The recap show of the AFC title game championship Sunday all came down earlier today, so day 11 is up both on social media, on the audio podcast, on obviously our YouTube channel as well. So you can always go back to watch day 11 of 40 Days and 40 Nights, which was a big recap of Championship Sunday and a preview of what to expect for the Super Bowl. Small early preview. Spoiler alert: I think the Patriots are in a lot of trouble. But nonetheless, again, that's on day 11. I wasn't sure what night 11 was going to bring because, okay, now you shift the focus. We've gotten over the hangover of what happened on Sunday. What are we looking ahead to? Did not think we'd be leading Pro Bowl. Was not expecting to maybe talk about Phillip Rivers again and him being a head coach. Did not expect to talk about more reality TV. Did not expect to talk about hip-hop and Kid Cudi. But these are the things we're going to get into today. This is going to be a wild one, but it's going to be a fun show. Again, this is your boy EJ Stewart. 40 Days and 40 Nights. Of course, you can catch all these episodes we're doing where I'm doing 2 live streams per day. One at 8 a.m. every day and one at 6 p.m. Those are, of course, Monday through Friday. So not every day, but every weekday. Monday through Friday, 8 a.m., 6 p.m., 2 live shows per day where I'll be talking all different new things throughout the entire day. Any breaking news, any fun topics, anything that comes to mind, we bring it to the show. We also have fun guests that come on the show as well. None scheduled for this evening, but we certainly will have some fun guests later this week. So I'm really excited, of course, about that. And again, we got a lot to get to, but it's going to be a lot of fun. Again, make sure if you're watching via YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. If you're not watching on YouTube and you want to know, snap, EJ has a YouTube channel. That's right. Me and my brothers operate a YouTube channel, New Generation Media. That is where this broadcast is being live streamed. You can go over to New Generation Media. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you comment. Make sure you give us as much support and engagement as possible. We greatly appreciate it. Also streaming live on X. Make sure you follow your boy on X, EJ_Stewart, where this is live streaming on X. And of course, you can, obviously give me a follow while you're at it. And I'm also streaming live on Instagram Live, IG Live, where we're happening there. Shout out to the folks on IG Live. They be holding it down in the chat and holding it down, watching me on IG Live as well. You can, of course, follow me there as well. Action EJ is where you'll follow me on Instagram Live. Of course, like I said, every podcast episode gets podcasted. So these live streams that happen, you miss them live, or you can't watch the whole thing, or you miss part of it, all good. Of course, you can go to YouTube, and it's always going to be there. But on our podcast network, New Generation Podcast Network, which is what you'll search wherever you get your podcasts, you can get these episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights, along with plenty of other fun, juicy content that we provide over at New Generation Media. So let's get the ball rolling, man, because we got a lot to get to, and we have plenty of time. It's not like we want a time crunch or anything, but I packed in this show probably the most topics I've had since I started. So I wanted to see if I can get to all of it in a reasonable manner, so you're not here till 10 p.m. And let's begin with what was, again, not news I had at all expected to start this show with. if you could have gave me 10 guesses of what I would start night 11 with, anything revolving the Pro Bowl would not have been brought up. And I don't even think anything revolving Shedeur Sanders would have been brought up, although he's always a lightning rod. However, the Browns are looking for a coach, but I mean, they're kind of on the back burner right now. We're focused on some more important teams. And while they will hire a coach soon, and there is some interesting ramifications for their coaching search right now and what it may mean for the New York Giants that maybe I'll get to here or in a little bit as well. But never would have thought we'd be leading Shedeur or Pro Bowl, especially considering it's Shedeur and Pro Bowl. But that's where we are, because we learned today that Shedeur Sanders has indeed been named a Pro Bowler. I cannot believe that this is where we're at when it comes to the Pro Bowl games. I cannot believe this is where we're at when it comes to Shedeur Sanders. But to be honest, I kind of love it. I'm not going to sit here, if you're expecting me to sit on a high horse and be like, oh, how dare they disrespect the sanctity of the Pro Bowl. I'm not the guy. I will say this. Is it completely, utterly ridiculous that this honor that is supposed to be bestowed to the quote-unquote all-stars of the NFL that is going to a rookie quarterback that threw 7 touchdowns and 10 picks and had an 18 QBR? It's crazy. Insane. I mean, he was picked over the likes of Trevor Lawrence, picked over the likes of, C.J. Stroud did not distinguish himself in the postseason for sure, but had much better stats, obviously, in the regular season. I mean, they were actually semi-competent to even star quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, you would argue, an MVP candidate, that were not selected for the Pro Bowl in the AFC, but the NFL is deciding to select Shedeur Sanders for the Pro Bowl events. Now, it's important to note the Pro Bowl is not what it used to be. It is not a game it typically was played in Hawaii for all these years where you're putting the AFC versus the NFC in like a actual football game. The game was always horrendous. Nobody was really tackling. Nobody was really hitting. Nobody wanted to get hurt. It was really the worst version of football you could probably watch. And while it actually rated pretty well and still rates pretty well considering everyone complains about how bad it is, they decided that because of how poor the TV product was, they switched it up, and now the Pro Bowl is now called the quote-unquote Pro Bowl games, which includes kickball and dodgeball and all different kinds of other lunchtime recess activities that you would do, and then a flag football game. So it's way less serious. Nobody's in pads. Everyone's in shorts, and it's just and it goes on for like multiple days. Like there's the flag football game, a game in quotation marks, on I guess Sunday, but then there's stuff that happens during the week. There's again dodgeball is always kind of the big culminating event, and I think all these events actually also go towards the score of whoever wins the Pro Bowl games. So this is not, again, like being named the MLB All-Star or like being named an NBA All-Star, even though that game is also becoming more of a joke. But nonetheless, this is supposed to be what the equivalent of those things are. And yes, it is utterly ridiculous that Shedeur Sanders is being put into this situation. But I kind of love that the NFL is for the ish, as the kids would say, that they know what this whole game is about and the goal of the game, which is simply to get as many eyeballs as possible. And when you consider so much of getting eyeballs goes beyond just people turning on the TV, but what you can produce for social media, it is not a surprise from that standpoint that Shedeur Sanders will be named to the Pro Bowl. But what I'll tell you, man, is this is maybe the best version of a rage bait move I've seen from a league. Because the league knows what this decision means and what it brings. It brings all the culture wars. It brings all the drama. It brings all the attention. I just mentioned earlier today that what I thought was kind of like a whatever take that wasn't that big a deal, though I thought it was odd, from Jamel Hill about Shedeur Sanders and how him and his rookie season is impacting how Falcons fans are viewing the Kevin Stefanski hire. Like, the guy's a lightning rod. I'll tell you, doing Maggie and Perloff's show, obviously I was the executive producer of that show on Infinity Sports Network. I also was, responsible for our social media. That along with the great Andrew Kaplan, who was my right hand and was the man. He's such a great job with what he does. Shout out to Cap, my ride or die GOAT when it comes to social media content. And like I would have some videos that I thought were kind of benign when it came to Shedeur Sanders, and we get hundreds of thousands of views. The algorithm has figured out that Shedeur Sanders brings clicks, brings comments, brings engagement, and they send these videos to anybody that would care about Shedeur Sanders. And now we've learned that is millions of people. And the NFL, again, is not silly, which is why when in the preseason this year, when they posted out of context that Dylan Gabriel quote about how, I'm here for clicks, I'm here for winning, not clicks, or whatever he said. He said I'm a competitor, not an entertainer. Completely out of context. It wasn't in any way a response to a question about Shedeur Sanders. I thought it was a silly comment to make just because I think, while he's a young player and, the guy, well, he's an old rookie, but he's a young player in the NFL. I figured, maybe give him a little bit of a break. I kind of thought the sensitivity of everything going around the situation, I think he should have been smarter. But nonetheless, the NFL putting that out of context, putting that, Dylan Gabriel says at halftime that he's a competitor, not an entertainer, and knowing how people would react to that, because we are in a world where stuff gets put up on social media and it is meant to give you a strong reaction, whether it's happiness, whether it's laughter, and a lot of times, and most of the time, anger. The NFL knew that game and put it out there. So that, to me, was the first sign that the NFL was all into the Shedeur Sanders game, and they were going to milk this thing as long as they possibly could. And considering he's a 5th-round pick, and considering he went to the Cleveland Browns, we actually really have no idea how long this thing's going to go with him being a viable, eyeball watcher, or a guy who's a needle mover, rather, is the best way to say it. We didn't know how long this guy was going to be a needle mover. He still is. The NFL understands that. So they finagled this situation where Drake May can't play in the Pro Bowl because he's going to the Super Bowl. And to think that the starting quarterback for one of the Super Bowl teams is being replaced by a guy who came into the season as the 4th-string quarterback of the Cleveland Browns and was a 5th-round pick, and who has an 18 QBR coming into the year. It's crazy. It's really funny. Again, I know there are folks who are really gonna get enraged by it and go crazy about it. I think there are some aspects of sports, man, where we can't help but laugh. Again, is it ridiculous? Does it look like a situation where the NFL clearly desperately looking for clicks? Yeah, and not that it already wasn't a mess, but does this kind of completely end any kind of meaning towards the Pro Bowl, or rather not even the Pro Bowl itself, but the honor of being named a Pro Bowler? Yeah, that's completely over. Being named a Pro Bowler means absolutely nothing when you're putting in 3rd, 4th-string quarterbacks who played a quarter of the season and threw 10 interceptions in a short amount of time. That's just not that you can no longer. It's gonna be tough for players when they look back on their careers to go on and say, "Hey, man, I was an 8-time Pro Bowler." Because guess what, Shedeur Sanders, whether he is a superstar or he's a flash in the pan and we never see this guy pan out, he will always be able to say, "I was a Pro Bowler." So that means if his career goes the way it has gone so far, that is not going to mean a damn thing when it comes to what it means for the history of the NFL, what it means in terms of evaluating how great a player was or their impact. What it means is the NFL ran out of bodies, or they needed somebody that would draw eyeballs, and that's what Shedeur Sanders is going to do. I'll tell you what, I don't know if I'll be watching. That's a strong thing. I have not watched anything involving the Pro Bowl. It's been a long time. I don't even want to lie to you and say how long it's been, but I want to say it's been at least, I'm 34 now. 10 years feels about right. Could it have been 8 or 7 maybe? But it's been a long time and I mean, when I mean watch it, I mean like I've turned the channel to anything going on with the game. I think it's been at least 10 years. So again, who am I to go crazy about something I'm not going to watch, something I don't care about? I will say this though, any social media clip, I will be watching that involves Shedeur Sanders. And while Shedeur Sanders may be a kind of fugazi star when it comes to being an NFL star in this game, in terms of what they've done on the field, he's a social media star. He's a star just in general, because he's extremely famous at this point in his life, I will be fascinated to see how he's reacting to with the other people, that are there, that are actual stars, that are actual NFL stars. Like, I'm sure there will be tons of viral moments because he's a part of this. But this is, to me, it's not as bad, but it's almost like they put Bronny James in the All-Star game. It's actually probably more akin if the NBA put Bronny James in, like, the Rising Stars Challenge, where it's, like, it's so obvious that he's not one of the best sophomores or rookies in the NBA, but they wanted to get eyeballs on the Rising Stars game, so then they put Bronny James in there. That is akin to kind of what this is to me. And again, it's been crazy to see, just like, and it's been surprising to me a little bit just how much, like, I usually don't mind naming names. I'm not gonna name names here, but I have seen like some like legacy media types like taking this seriously. I'm like, you don't see that this is obviously rage bait? You don't see what the NFL is doing? Like, again, I don't know what. Clearly, there's a younger person in that office that is now looking at this saying, hey, you guys don't understand the golden opportunity you have here. And then the funniest guy we could put in this game to make this, get this the most attention, get this the most buzz. And again, Shedeur Sanders was the obvious person to pick if you were looking for that. This game is supposed to be a celebration of the NFL's best players, and that's not necessarily going to be the case with Shedeur Sanders. But it's also a showcase for the NFL's biggest stars. And while, again, on the field, he's not one of the biggest stars, in general, he is one of the biggest stars. He is one of the most famous people in the NFL. So that's why he's there. I want to know, are you going to watch the Pro Bowl now? Are you going to watch the Pro Bowl games? Are you going to want to see Shedeur Sanders playing dodgeball? Do you want to see Shedeur Sanders playing, Ring Around the Rosie or whatever the hell these guys play? I can't imagine I'll watch the games. I do think I will at the very least be following social media to see what is going on, how is he doing, what mic'd up clips will they have with him, with the likes of a TJ Watt or some other random, great player, Puka Nacua. Like, I want to see these moments. I'm totally. I think that's fun. And I'm actually the only thing I think I will take a step back with in terms of what I will maybe be kind of like with a critical eye, because nothing about this I think you could view from a critical lens. It's utterly ridiculous. I will be like curious just how like the other NFL players respond to him, because what we've heard, I think, kind of different things, but I think the majority of what we heard is that the NFL players like really like this guy, which he seems extremely likable, and he's very charismatic, and he comes from a very famous family, so it would actually honestly make sense that people would like him. But what's been talked about has been this idea in terms of why he wasn't playing initially and why he has been this unlikable for some folks, has been this idea that he's too brash, or that he's too in your face, or that he's not humble. And then teams have related that, saying, well, that's the reason why we can't put him on our team, because you can't have a backup quarterback that's that lit, as Cam Newton would say, right? You can't have a guy who we're not convinced is a star player having this much of a visceral reaction they're presenting, or they're providing for our fans or for the team. It just doesn't make sense. The guy is not that important if he's going to be a backup and not going to be a guy who's going to be a star player. We can't take that risk. But the aspect of, how does he fit in a locker room? How does he fit among his peers, given he is a big personality and given all this attention that comes to him? With the Browns, it sounded like for the most part, the players really liked him and the players really wanted him to play. I know we had the random thing from Dylan Gabriel's fiance that was saying, all the players want Dylan to play, which then was refuted, it seemed like, by a lot of folks within the organization who kind of knew the deal, that Shedeur was actually really popular among the team. So I will be curious to see, like, how do the other players react to him? Like, do they also love up on him? Do they have a lot of fun with him? Does he get a cold shoulder? Like, I assume they'll love him. I can't guarantee what the reaction is going to be, but I think that aspect is also a very fun thing to break down as well, is how do the other players respond to him? I think he's going to get a great reception. I think he's going to have a great reception from whatever fans are involved with the Pro Bowl games. I'll be honest, I don't even know where this game is, what these games are. They've been in Orlando in the past. I don't know if that's where it still is. This ESPN article seems to have no interest in saying where it is. Oh, it's in San Francisco. It's where the Super Bowl is now. That's right. They changed that. I think that's a recent change. And he'll be coached by Steve Young. Steve Young's coaching the AFC. I hope Steve Young knows how to play kickball and dodgeball because that is apparently what he'll be doing. It's unbelievable. Shedeur Sanders, officially a Pro Bowl quarterback. Does this mean the Pro Bowl should end? Is this the end of the sanctity of the Pro Bowl? I want to hear from you. Get in the comment section. What do you think about Shedeur Sanders being a Pro Bowler? Does it hurt the legacy of the game? Does it hurt the legitimacy of what it means to be a Pro Bowler? The only thing I think that it is annoying is, like I said, it kills any idea. If someone says they're a Pro Bowler, no one's gonna give a damn at this point because they're gonna. The example, the other example you used to use was Snoop Huntley was a Pro Bowler, which also was weird. But that seemed to be they ran out of guys that would want to play in the game, so they just went to whoever was starting towards the end of the year. They landed on Tyrone Snoop Huntley, so a backup quarterback for 1 year was actually a Pro Bowler, which was kind of crazy. But now that example is going to be, well, this guy was an X amount of time Pro Bowler. They can say, well, Shedeur Sanders is a Pro Bowler, so it doesn't matter. That part of it, in terms of if we do want to talk about how great a player is, I do think it's helpful in baseball and in football, in baseball and basketball, that we can point to what this guy was an X amount of time All-Star. Now, football, it's going to be a lot harder because, again, someone's going to say, like, Russell Wilson is a 10-time Pro Bowler. And I think, for the most part, all of those have been legitimate. He was a great player in the league. But now it's like, well, I'm not going to take the time to pierce through, was he a sixth replacement for all these guys that didn't want to play? How many of these were legitimate? Like, nobody's going to do that work. So I think it does in terms of just, water cooler, bar stool kind of conversation about, who the best players are and why certain guys are good. You're not going to be able to say, well, this guy was an X amount of time Pro Bowler. At least not this generation. Maybe we could do that talking about Emmitt Smith. Maybe you do that talking about Mike Singletary. Or maybe, Mean Joe Green. At that time, it was really an all-star game. They were just picking the best guys. But where it's at now, it's a complete joke. It is a joke. That is obvious. But why get mad about it? Like why not just get in on the joke? Why not just have the fun like I'm gonna have? I'm gonna have so much fun with this. Again, I ain't watching no second of it. I ain't watching this game at all. But I will be engaging with these clips. I will enjoy seeing what it's going to be like watching Shedeur Sanders. This guy live streams everything, so I'm sure he'll be live streaming all these ridiculous interactions with him, with the best players in the NFL. I can't wait. I can't believe this has happened. But Shedeur Sanders these kind of things happen to him, man. Like there are some folks that are just like, and listen, I know he's very like religious, and like he's already a blessed man just because of just the life he's been able to live, his dad being Deion Sanders and everything. But I mean, beyond like that, there's something else with Shedeur Sanders. Like, I don't know what the word is, but there's some folks that just, what he is, and this is what, this term was brought to me by my fiance. This is not an original term from me, and I've mentioned it before. I don't know if I mentioned it on this live stream, but I've mentioned it on shows I've done, whether it's been working with Maggie and Perloff on Infinity Sports Network, or hosting on WFAN, or even doing podcasts here on New Generation Media. Shedeur Sanders has main character energy. He's the main character. That's who he is. Like, it doesn't matter how much you can try to cast him aside. It doesn't matter how much the chips seem to be fully against him in certain aspects. He's always going to find his way to become the main character of the story at some point. It's just how it goes. So here, a Pro Bowl that nobody was thinking about, that was going to create zero headlines and generate zero buzz. Shedeur Sanders finds himself in the middle of it. For a game that's supposed to be an all-star game when he was kind of terrible. Like, he's a rookie. It wasn't like it was the worst thing in the world. We've seen worse rookies. But, like, he kind of had a terrible year. Definitely is not deserving to be a Pro Bowler from the All-Star standpoint of this. But he's the main character. So, of course, he's going to find his way into the Pro Bowl. I just find everything involved in the Sanders to be just funny. And we're not done with the Sanders, by the way. We have another Sanders story that is equally ridiculous. Again, they're just a family, again, that just, they always find their ways into headlines, and it's quite unbelievable. So, we'll see with Shedeur Sanders and how this is going to go. I guess congratulations to him for becoming a Pro Bowler in his rookie year. The fact that that's going to become a running meme, that's going to become a conversation and a talking point, Because also again, the people on the Shedeur thing, what's so funny about it, and listen, I've had serious takes about Shedeur Sanders. I think that he in many ways is like a very interesting cultural figure to follow because of how people respond to him, and there are aspects about him and aspects of his game that I actually do enjoy actually talking about in a serious manner. But it is funny because there are some people who are so invested in their love for this kid or just their defense of this kid. And on the flip side, there are so many people that are just so against this kid. And I say kid, no, I don't mean it like disrespectfully. I know he's like 24 years old, and to me he's a kid. He's 24. I'm 34. But you know what I mean, young man. This young man, and there's some people so against this young man. They take it so seriously, and they can't. They're so aggressive. I can't believe this Shedeur Sanders, the media, and you get. If they're not talking into a microphone or calling in on a radio show, you can almost see and hear the gritted teeth through their tweets. And I'm like, it's not that serious. He's a quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, and he played at Colorado. There are some aspects of it that have been serious. I thought the stuff that happened with him being pranked was awful. There's some aspects that, and just evaluating what's best for his career if he is going to succeed, and some of the decisions that he's made that I think haven't been the best decisions. I also think, some of the things where it feels like there has been the most support for him either has also been fun to talk about, or at least serious to talk about. But at the end of the day, again, some of the stuff you see with these people talking about Shedeur Sanders, you would think that they were talking about a dignitary. You would think they would be talking about the president of the United States. I'm like, he's a third string quarterback for the Browns. He just elicits a lot of emotion, and he elicits a lot of reaction, which is why the NFL is putting them in this position. Let's get to some other stuff, and again, we will talk about the Sanders family a little bit later, because there's one story that I'm not surprised, considering it's Deion Sanders, so anything is kind of par for the course for what you may see from the Colorado program, but I was a little surprised that this is the next route they're going, and I think it does have some, it does spark some conversation about just where we are with student athletes, especially college football players at this point in time. And I use student athletes with the heaviest of quotation marks because they are employees and at this point in time, but they don't have the bargaining and the rights of employees. So, but we'll get to that a little bit later. I want to get some other news happening in the NFL, and we begin back in Buffalo. Again, another place that I did not expect to talk about this much. I think the Buffalo Bills, I think I spoke about this team probably more than any other team on this show so far. I'm hoping once they hire a head coach, I really got to talk about these clowns again because I'm kind of sick of them, to be honest. But we will talk Bills one more time because just had an update on the Philip Rivers head coaching aspirations. There are none anymore. He is officially taking himself out of consideration for the Bills job. This was first reported by the Athletic. And Philip Rivers, who according to sources to the Athletic, apparently this was a decision that he made because he after going through the process, he was very appreciative of the process, appreciative of the consideration to become the head coach of the Buffalo Bills. He determined that he was not done wanting to be a father of 100 kids. I joke. I think he has 10 kids. 100 kids and a high school coach. He wanted to just go back to his what was really kind of like a really civilian life, despite being someone who was once really famous. He wanted to go back to that. So that is what's being told. Again, there's always, whenever somebody withdraws from a job, they didn't fire me, I quit kind of thing. I never know what the situation is and why someone withdraws. But that is what's being said. That he determined that this was not something he wanted to do at this time, which is totally possible. Again, you're a multi-millionaire living a pretty chill life. The NFL, in terms of being a head coach, is a crazy existence. It's one of the things where you better love what it means to be an NFL head coach and the grind that goes with that to do it, because it is unrelenting and uncompromising. So it's very possible. Phil Rivers said that I don't want any part of this now that I've learned what this is, and I'm going to take a step back and just be a dad of 11 again, or how many kids he has. So that's part of it. Very possible also that he could say, I'm not going to get the job. Let me say I don't want the job, so that, it doesn't look bad on me that I went into this interview and perhaps didn't look good or they were unimpressed or whatever the situation may be. I don't think that that's what happened, just because what does Phil Rivers have to lose when it comes to whether or not he gets passed up by, I don't know, all the candidates who are way more qualified than him, that have way more experience coaching? Like, there's nothing to lose. So I don't know why there would be a save face move from him. That doesn't seem to be something that would matter. At least it shouldn't. People do things that don't matter all the time, or do things that don't make sense all the time. But it doesn't make sense to me that would be something that would benefit him. Like, it would benefit someone, for example, not to say this is happening, but let's say Bill Belichick was involved with the coaching search. It may be a save face move for Belichick to say, I'm withdrawing from consideration for the Buffalo Bills right as he's about to know that they're going to pass him up, because he may not want what may be the stench of it looking like the Bills or some other team are passing him up for someone else, right? Like, he literally had to deal with the embarrassment of the Falcons being really interested in him and then picking Raheem Morris over him. Like, just flat out we're going in a different direction than Bill Belichick. Like, these other teams that were going after other guys. Like, they didn't go after Raheem. What happened? They went Morris, right? I don't know what happened to the Falcons, but he wanted the Falcons job. He didn't get it. I guess Raheem Morris was the guy. I don't know why I doubted that. But, yeah, there are reasons maybe you want to avoid that. This is not, again, one of those times. For him, it shouldn't be. Again, Phil Rivers, you should have had no shot at this job. So I don't think he's saving face. I do feel like it's just kind of, once again, though, just wraps just how silly this whole exercise was and just how unserious the Buffalo Bills organization is. Because let's say we do take this at face value, that Phil Rivers went into this interview, did the interview, looked around and said, I'm good. I mean, the idea that the Bills would have pursued somebody who was this half in, half out about even doing the job with this little experience, again, just speaks to that there's no, I have no hope, if I was a Bills fan, that this ownership group and this front office is going to figure it out with Josh Allen. None. This guy, in theory, if he really was a candidate, would have been handed, in terms of purely just like football situation. Forget about Bean and Pagula and what they are as executives, but from a football situation, getting to coach Josh Allen, getting to coach a winning team, probably the best job on the market. And he's saying, no thanks, I'd rather be a high school coach. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. And like, oh, no thanks, I'd rather just be a dad. Like, I mean, like, really? And you brought this guy in, you wasted valuable time that you could have spent talking to some other candidate that maybe could have knocked your socks off, or doing more work on other folks in this coaching search that actually are qualified and actually would die to get a job like this and have the opportunity. And because you, again, think that you know it all and you know what it means to find the next NFL head coach, you thought that bringing in Philip Rivers with no coaching experience was worth your time. Turns out, was not worth your time. In fact, a complete waste of time. He's not going to be your coach during this cycle. Because assuming you don't have a guy who's going to get hired and fired in a year or two, I assume if Phil Rivers ever turns around and decides to actually want to be head coach, I'm sure the guy you have will probably still be entrenched. So if he's in the cycle next year or the year after that, he's never going to be your head coach. And anything, you would have just did the groundwork for some other team that would then probably call you and say, hey, how'd you like Phil Rivers? I mean, just another waste of time. An utter complete waste of time. You brought, once again, all these negative headlines, all this negative attention to your organization after firing Sean McDermott, and now looking at Philip Rivers, all for nothing. He's not going to become your head coach. He has no interest now in being your head coach. According to him, and according to what the word is getting out there, is that he prefers to just go back to his civilian life. Again, clowns over there. Get the Barnum Brothers music, get the Big Apple Circus music, and then just play that on a loop. I said for a week. Turns out you need a second week. You did a week last week. Play it again on loop all throughout the Orchard Park facility where the Bills practice, and just play it nonstop. 2 weeks in a row. You guys are clowns. And we'll see what ends up happening with their search. Obviously, we mentioned earlier about the Jags OC who is pulled out of the Browns job, but apparently is still, pursuing the Bills job, and there's a chance that he may get the job. So we'll see if that ends up happening. That's Udinski, who's the offensive coordinator of the Jaguars. He also spent plenty of time, obviously, working under Kevin O'Connell with the Minnesota Vikings. So, Grant Udinski, you may hire him, and we'll break down that hire when it happens. Obviously, he's coached under some really good offensive coaches. He's coached under Kevin O'Connell. He's coached under Liam Cohen. Now he's never been a play caller before. So if that is the route they're going, that would be, taking a bold step and taking a guy who's never been a head coach before. But the word has been that Brian Daboll initially, that he was the leader in the clubhouse, which again, nothing says I'm unserious than I'm considering hiring Brian Daboll to be my head coach for a team that wants to win a Super Bowl. Completely, utterly ridiculous from the Buffalo Bills. Let's keep it going here. And some stories I didn't get to earlier in the day that I wanted to get to tonight, and then we'll get to some of the other stuff happening in sports. But I wanted to keep the coaching carousel stuff going because there was some other interesting news on the coaching stuff. Real quickly, actually, I'll say something that wasn't actually mentioned prior to when I get to talk about the Giants here. But right now, again, the Browns, we mentioned their coaching search. Udinski is out. He's decided to not be pursued. And we're kind of coming down to the nitty-gritty. The names aren't that sexy, but Jim Schwartz, who's their defensive coordinator now, very well could be in play here. Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator previously of the Baltimore Ravens, could be in play here. And that feels about right for this job, to be honest. Because if you are going in that direction, hiring within for a defensive coordinator who actually has done a good job with their defense, or going for an older guy who has shown that he can call plays, but it has not really been taken seriously as a NFL head coaching candidate, and hiring him is one of those things where this is probably one of the only places he can get hired as a head coach. That's where the Browns are. But that obviously that search, we'll see what ends up happening with that. But Udinski's obviously out, so now you're zeroing in on some of the lower end guys when it came to the quote unquote sexiest names. There were plenty of guys we heard earlier that had also pulled out of the Browns head coaching job. But the one aspect for the Giants that we think about that is going to be important to note if Todd Monken does become the head coach of the Cleveland Browns is now they're looking for an offensive coordinator, because it seems like, given we're starting to see some hires happening with the New York Giants, and then the early reporting when John Harbaugh was hired was that John Harbaugh was hoping that he'd bring on Todd Monken. That was the early word. If Todd Monken gets hired to become the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, which I feel like is becoming increasingly likely. I'm not saying that it's the most likely scenario. Who knows with these things? But they interviewed him a second time. He's definitely in the mix, and it's definitely a possibility. That, I think, would pour a little bit of cold water on what you would feel about this whole John Harbaugh situation with the New York Giants. If there was anything that would give you some real pause about whether or not this whole thing's going to work out with John Harbaugh ushering in and finishing the development of Jackson Dart as a young player, them losing out on Todd Monken would be something to follow. Because we've seen John Harbaugh offenses, they haven't typically been very explosive. I mean, Joe Flacco's development went fine. He probably kind of became what he should have been. He was kind of seen as a middle tier guy, which is why he was drafted towards the middle of the first round. He was not seen as a generational type talent, and that's kind of what his career ended up being. So it's not like he destroyed Joe Flacco or ruined Joe Flacco, or that there was some idea that Joe Flacco was going to be some better player than he wasn't had he been to a different coach with a different scheme or anything like that. But John Harbaugh is not an offensive guy, and his teams have not been really predicated on being explosive offensively, with the exception of these years with Lamar Jackson. The most explosive years, the most successful years were under Todd Monken. If John Harbaugh doesn't bring his guy over to be the OC, the guy who I truly think is just handed the keys in terms of the offense, I would become a little concerned about what is going to be the offensive plan for Jackson Dart. What is the plan to get him to play smart football, to stop taking all these hits, and to put him in an offense that's going to make the game easy for him? Because I felt like what we were seeing from the New York Giants was they were actually trying to make the game harder for him. It was hard enough given he had no one to throw to, but then also asking him to basically carry the team, not just through with his arm, but with his legs as well. That was not to me a feasible environment to usher in a new era of a rookie quarterback. It was ridiculous. So I was hoping you'd have a very offensive-friendly coach being hired, which is why I wanted Mike McCarthy. I'm going to say it for the millionth time. You get a guy who's another adult in the room, another guy with a championship ring. You can't really sit here and complain. I thought the Harbaugh hire was good. But if there's one hiccup in this that would give me pause about whether or not John Harbaugh is going to work out, it would be if Tom Monken is not able to come on board with the New York Giants, and he takes the job with the Cleveland Browns, because now John Harbaugh is looking for a coordinator. And I'll be honest, last time he needed to find a new coordinator when Mike McDonald left, it went bad. He hired Zach Orr. Zach Orr had two of the worst years in Baltimore Ravens defensive history, being the defensive coordinator. And if he has to do the same thing with the offense, he loses offensive coordinator. Am I totally confident that the John Harbaugh I've seen of late will hire the right guy? I have some question marks, especially given how late we are in this cycle now too, where now a lot of the guys that could possibly be candidates are going back to their teams, or guys that are are being hired as head coaches. Again, it's not like there's just like obvious names out there that you feel like, oh, this is a perfect name, plug and play, and he'll be perfect to fit for Jackson Dart. There aren't a lot of guys out there, so that's gonna be a story to follow definitely moving forward. The Giants definitely did talk about one name in terms of defensive coordinator. They've hired a couple of people, but Denard Wilson's going to be their defensive coordinator. They announced that over the weekend. Well, Wilson was the defensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans the last few years. He also has spent 1 year with John Harbaugh as the defensive backs coach. He also had spent some time with the Jets as a defensive backs coach, working under Ty Bowles, and 1 year with Adam Gase. So he's actually been around the league. I know a lot of people have been kind of presenting him as this John Harbaugh acolyte, but when I really kind of looked at his background, that is really not the case. He's coached for all different kinds of people. So Wilson comes in, the Tennessee Titan defense, they've had one of the worst offenses in the NFL, so his defense has been on the field a ton. What I will say is, I feel like when I watch the Tennessee Titans play, and not necessarily this year, but I thought last year, I thought their defense actually was pretty good. So, it's going to be hard kind of judging the hire based on the Titans, given how bad they've been. But I do think, considering the team they've been about and the background that Denard Wilson has, I'm not, totally against the hire. I'm a little surprised that they didn't find someone with a little more, clear, obvious, okay, this guy has done this thing with these people. He, a track record of great success on the defensive side of the ball. I can't say that for Denard Wilson. Again, I don't think he's been embarrassing. I think that, again, the defenses have been mostly fine, but I do feel like I would have expected maybe to see more details about a guy who maybe was coaching better defenses, to be quite honest. I will say what was interesting was that the Titans, even though I want to say this was not this year but last year, despite having one of the worst defenses in terms of total yards, they had one of the best passing defenses in the NFL. They actually ranked second in passing defense 2 years ago. So and he's a defensive backs coach, so it's expected that he would maybe be good at that field. So they've had success when it comes to some success with passing defense, things like that. But it's just hasn't been consistent. Again, on one side hand, I kind of thought it'd be someone with more of a track record of success. You don't really have that because he was saddled with the Tennessee Titans, but you do have someone who comes from a very diverse background because he's coached with Mike McDonald, he's coached with Todd Bowles, he's now coached his own defense, he's coached with a ton of teams, he coached with the Eagles defense as well. He was with Jonathan Gannon, who also got hired, who we'll talk about him in a second. So it's a little bit of a roll of the dice, I think. It's not a complete roll of the dice. Not the guy's never coached. But again, yes, his second year in the NFL, the Titans had despite giving up the most points, they gave up the second most yards in the NFL. And the second best the second fewest yards in the NFL and the second fewest passing yards, despite giving up the most points. I don't know if that's because, Will Levis was throwing the ball to the other team and just giving up touchdowns and fumble recoveries and pick sixes. I don't know why, but somehow the team with the second fewest yards in 2024 also ended up with the second most touchdowns, or excuse me, most yards, points scored. 30th in points scored, second in total yards, second in passing yards. So they've shown at times that they can at least stop some people. Both years, their pass defense was pretty okay. So this is definitely a wait and see deal. I think if you're a Giant fan, I think you're hoping for a knock out of the park home run that you can feel good about and strong about today. That's not what you got. Doesn't mean that Denard Wilson can't be a good defensive coordinator, that he isn't a good defense coordinator. It's just that we haven't quite seen the fruits of that labor quite yet. They are going to be an aggressive defense under Denard Wilson. Every single coach he's coached for is an aggressive guy. If you're talking about Greg Williams and Todd Bowles, very aggressive. Jonathan Gannon, they don't blitz as much in Philadelphia, but they do always bring a lot of pressure. And then obviously working with Mike McDonald, that's also, again, you're bringing a lot of pressure. So and the Tennessee Titans are a team that were an attacking defense. So if you were hoping to get to attacking, aggressive style of defense and keeping that with the Giant mold, you're going to get that with this guy. But I'm not sure in terms of how successful he will be. That is going to be a huge TBD because all we have to work on is 2 years with Tennessee Titans. And for his sake, I don't think it'd be fair to say I'm going to judge him based on what he did with the Tennessee Titans. I think that's definitely not fair. But he's new defensive coordinator for the Giants. The Giants, it's obviously a big role because the Giant defense has been seen by most as one that's a very talented group, but is one that is completely underachieved. It's unclear if it's simply they aren't actually that good and we've overrated their talent. Is it they're lacking talent in spots that are hurting them, which I think is more of the problem. I think the fact that their secondary is so bad, I don't think their front seven can cover up for how bad the secondary is. That's kind of my assessment of what's wrong with the Giants defense. Or is it that, Shane Bowen was such a bum, which he kind of was, but still, he was such a bum that just if they could get a competent defensive coordinator in there, this team has the tools to be a great defense. We're about to find out. It's going to be interesting to follow. We also, like I mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, that Jonathan Gannon will become the defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. Now, this one I find very interesting. And I've seen Packer fans are not very happy with this one. I think Packers fans got to chill. I'll be honest, I kind of like this hire. Jonathan Gannon, I know it was kind of maybe a smaller sample size with him operating purely as a defensive coordinator. But Jonathan Gannon is a good, at least he seemed to be, a good defensive coordinator. I mean, the Eagles defenses that he obviously went to the Super Bowl. It was small sample size, but in his last year in Philly, you're talking about a team that was top 5 in rush defense, top 3 in overall defense. Excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Top 2 in yards in defense. In terms of total yards, they were a menace when it came to rushing the passer. So you can get a pass rush with his defenses. And then in Arizona, for a team that weren't stacked with awesome defenses, they were pretty good. They were kind of middle of the pack. Some years they were better than others. First year they actually were pretty good. Then the later years were the years where they really started to struggle a little bit. I mean, I don't look at this as this disastrous hire. I think that Gannon, from the minute he got hired by the Cardinals, felt like a guy who probably was better suited being a coordinator. That was the reality. The personality seemed a little odd. The fit with the team seemed pretty odd. Everything about it just seemed like it wasn't going to work out. He seemed like the typical guy that was hired to be fired. But if you would have told me that Jonathan Gannon would have been a potential guy to be anybody's defensive coordinator, I would have said that's a pretty good hire. And to get a guy who you're going to be able to hire who has DC experience coaching in the Super Bowl, who has head coaching experience as well, I think you're walking into a locker room that I think they're still kind of young. Like, it's not like this is a team that's old. So it's not like it's an old team, but you are looking at a team that has some battle scars now. They've been through the ringer a little bit. They've played in big playoff games. They've competed for divisions. They competed for not competing for a championship, but they competed to go deep into the postseason. I think bringing in a guy with a little bit of cachet and a little bit of a name, I think will allow them to actually buy in probably a little bit quicker than if you brought in a guy that had no name. It's not that Jonathan Gannon distinguished himself as a great head coach with the Cardinals, but he was very good with the Eagles, and he was a head coach. So I actually kind of like the hire. I also like the fact that Gannon, again, is a guy when he was in Philadelphia, was able to really unlock those pass rushers in a major way. And, Micah Parsons, we'll see when he comes back, but we know the Packer defense is gonna hinge on whether or not Micah Parsons can return healthy with his ACL injury. I like the idea of hooking him up with Jonathan Gannon, who also did a good job of unlocking another undersized edge rusher in Hassan Reddick. So Jonathan Gannon, new hire for the Packers. He's going to be the DC. The Packer vibe right now, not immaculate. Just the fans, the way they feel. I think a lot of folks wanted LaFleur gone. I'm surprised they brought him back. I thought, given how things had gone, that he had shown that he had worn out his welcome. So I don't know if I feel good overall just about the situation with Green Bay and where they're at. I don't think this hire is a reason to feel bad about it, though. Again, I look at Jonathan Gannon as a more than competent defensive coach, a defensive coordinator. So we'll see how this goes. Now, he's not like he's been a defensive coordinator for many years. There's only, again, similar to Darren Wilson, only 2 years to go off of. Those 2 years in Philly are the only years you have to figure out whether or not you feel like Jonathan Gannon is a good defensive coordinator. But again, in both years, you're talking about top 10 defenses. In both years, you're talking about teams that were, again, near the top of the league or at the top of the league when it came to sacks. So I'll tell you this, it's a much more impressive track record than what you have with the Giants and Shedeur Wilson. So I actually like this hire. I thought that Gannon as a coordinator makes sense. He fits. I think he's going to be really good there. And now, will they figure out their offense? Will they continue to be an offense that is so hit or miss? Will they have these long stretches of games or even seasons where it seems like their offense is out of sync? Those are questions for the head coach. That's not questions that we can ask to Jonathan Gannon. But I do think that Gannon could be perfectly fine as that defensive coordinator. I mean, who was Jeff Hafley? Jeff Hafley before he became the Packers defensive coordinator. I think people had no idea what to expect from him. And he ended up being great. So considering, again, that's another guy who had head coaching experience before coming into the booth and becoming the defensive coordinator, I think I see a pattern there of taking a guy with head coaching experience and putting him in that spot. I think LaFleur wants somebody who can completely take care of the defensive side of the ball so he can focus primarily on the offense because he is holding on to play calling for dear life. There are people over there who do not want to continue to call plays, and I think you're going to have to claw it from his bare, dead hands if you think that he's going to give up play calling at this point in time. So he wants to hand the defense to somebody else. I think Jonathan Gannon, given his experience, his success as defensive coordinator, and as being a head coach, he's a really good fit for the job. So I actually kind of like it. I know Packers fans were not that thrilled about it, but I don't see how they could have done really that much better given the guys that were out there. I think he's going to be a good fit for them. Let's head to the NBA. Some news that is still kind of, we're trying to wrap our heads around it, and the situation with Giannis Antetokounmpo continues to be very bizarre. So he injured his calf at the end of last week. It's a re-injury. We mentioned it a little bit last week. So he said he expected to be out 4 to 6 weeks. I think he did speak today, and he said there's right now no timetable for his return. So right now he's on the pine. Now, when it comes to his future with the Bucks beyond whether or not he comes back healthy, but actually staying on the team, that still is remained to be a big question. He said he doesn't know whether or not he's going to get traded at this point in time, which actually is a little bit of a difference from, some of the other answers where he kept saying, I want to be a Milwaukee Buck. I'm not demanding a trade. Now he's like, I don't know. And it was noteworthy that today, Marcus Spears, who is Mark Spears, a reporter for ESPN on the NBA side, he thinks that it is likely that Giannis Antetokounmpo has played his last game with the Milwaukee Bucks. Considering the trade deadline's in a week, that would be huge that you're thinking he's going to get traded in a week. Now, I don't know if he's going to say, well, Giannis is going to be shut down for the rest of the year, and that's why he's played his last game, because then Giannis will eventually get traded in the offseason. But with the trade deadline looming, any reports about Giannis potentially playing his last game as a Buck certainly will raise eyebrows, no question. But what I saw today that I thought was particularly interesting was what came down the pipe from Shout out to Henry Abbott, True Hoop. I don't guess he's not. I didn't realize he wasn't with ESPN anymore, so apologies if he's not. But this was from his actual blog, and I've actually really enjoyed Abbott's work for years. He had some juicy details about Giannis, where his mindset has been over the course of last offseason and coming into this year, and some of the machinations that are happening behind the scenes to potentially get Giannis to what is being referred to as his preferred destination. So let's begin with the details from the offseason, which according to this report from Henry Abbott, Giannis Antetokounmpo was this close to firing his agent, his longtime agent, because he was unable to facilitate a trade to out of Milwaukee. Giannis Antetokounmpo, we've had these various weird kind of qualifiers for what exactly happened this offseason. He is saying, I did not demand a trade. I know Doc Rivers has come out strong and say, he did not demand a trade. But a conversation was happening, and then word got to the Bucks that the one team he wanted to go to was the Knicks. So a conversation that happened with the Knicks and some exclusive window the Knicks had to try to make a trade, and then it didn't happen. So I don't know how a guy says, I don't want to be traded. The Bucks say he didn't demand a trade. But there was these weeks where you were talking to the Knicks about trading him, and you knew that's where he wanted to go. Weird situation. Giannis has recently said, I'll never demand a trade. So, again, weird kind of qualifiers for what exactly has been going on with Giannis. But now this report saying that he was so upset that they didn't find a way to get him out of Milwaukee that he almost fired his longtime agent. So that to me tells me that the intensity for which Giannis wants to be out of Milwaukee is as intense as it can be. Don't listen to the BS about he didn't demand a trade actually, and anyone that's at this point trying to push this narrative that Giannis actually isn't all that upset or that he's not necessarily demanding a trade. That's nonsense. We know what time it is. He is trying to get out of Milwaukee, and again, according to this report, he nearly fired his agent for failing to facilitate that trade, which I have no reason to dispute or question this report. If the Bucks have a conversation with Giannis, and out of that conversation comes this idea that they know he wants to be a Knick, or at the very least that is one of the teams he would want to play for, and then an exclusive window was created for the teams, the Knicks and the Bucks, to try to work out a trade, and then it doesn't happen, and he's back with the Bucks, languishing away on a team that is fighting like hell just to get into the play-in tournament, let alone make the playoffs, while the Knicks have had a lot of issues. The Knicks are still considered one of the favorites at the very least in the Eastern Conference. 1 + 1 = 2. Of course, he would be furious probably that he is still in the Bucks and the Knicks look like a winning situation and he's not there. So, I'm sure Giannis will come out and go crazy and deny this report. I'm sure Giannis' agent, who's probably trying to keep his job, will come out and deny this report and all this stuff. I'm sure all that stuff is going to happen. I'm sure the Bucks will deny. But, again, read between the lines. 1 + 1 = 2. Bucks and Giannis talk. The conclusion comes he would like to be a Knick, but he didn't demand a trade. Huh? They actually talk to the Knicks. They don't come up with a trade. Giannis has to play this season with all these weird conversations about his future and uncertainty about it, and that, I'm locked in, I'm here for now, so that's where I'm at. And all the tension and all the reports about the frustrations around the team and around him, given how the season is gone. Yeah, I totally believe that he tried to fire his agent, or at the very least he considered it. Because I think if you look at Giannis and where his situation right now is at, it's absolutely miserable considering what he hoped. It seemed what he hoped would happen, which was that he would become a New York Knick, or at the very least be out of Milwaukee. So there was that aspect, that he almost fired his longtime agent. But you may say, okay, that's kind of old news. That was over the offseason. We're now in this season. So is this really a big deal? It is a massive deal because of the other news we got from this report from Henry Abbott. Again, shout out to Henry Abbott. It is that CEO and president of Clutch Sports, Rich Paul, another guy who's become a recurring character on this show. There are some recurring characters that have become staples of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Mike McCarthy, Rich Paul, Phillip Rivers, the Bills organization. There's some guys that just seem to find their way into stories for this show, and it's not on purpose. It just happens to be they've been news cycle for, and they've been top of mind for the stories that we've been talking about. Rich Paul, out of nowhere, apparently, according to this report, has been angling behind the scenes to represent Giannis Antetokounmpo to get him to, again, what is being referred to as his preferred destination. Rich Paul has made public comments about the Giannis Antetokounmpo situation on his podcast. Again, I mentioned before, there's no way you can tell me he is doing that podcast just for the sake of I want to get off some takes. There's got to be some kind of ulterior motive to it, especially given how much he's talking about stuff around the league. Like, this to me is like, okay, now I see what you were talking about with that whole, hey, if I was the Bucks, why not try to send Giannis to Atlanta? What? Why would he want to go to Atlanta? I mean, Jalen Johnson, he's from Milwaukee. I'm not going to mention that he's my client. But he's from Milwaukee. He's a good young player. Maybe he's saying, I'm like, why are you talking about players that aren't yours? Why are you talking about teams that you don't run? It just seems weird. This makes sense, apparently, that apparently Rich Paul has been angling behind the scenes to want to become Giannis's representation to hopefully get him out of Milwaukee into his quote-unquote preferred destination. This has gone so far in terms of the length that Rich Paul has gone that, according to this report, he has been trying to talk to Thanasis. Thanasis has been his in. He's been trying to get to Thanasis, trying to convince him that he should be the guy that should push forward and be Giannis' representation, that he can get him to his preferred destination. Now, once again, unless something's going to change that we don't know, or Giannis is going to expand the destination that he wants to go to, that preferred destination that we know about is the New York Knicks. There's been no other team that's been mentioned as a team that, this is a team that Giannis would be open to going to in any legitimate report. There's been rumors, there's been others, but the only team that's been talked about where he'd want to go, that where he'd be interested in, has been the Knicks. And Rich Paul has opened his mouth about the New York Knicks as well. He said things about them, and that's probably not an accident. We know that Rich Paul and Leon Rose and William Wesley, a.k.a. Worldwide West, who is the executive vice president of the Knicks, they all had some kind of powwow last year to bury whatever hatchet that was left over from LeBron James' decision to fire Leon Rose as his agent and disconnect himself from William Wesley, and in turn allow Rich Paul to push forward as his agent and manager throughout his career. And the one thing we can say about Rich Paul is he has had great success in getting his clients, the big end clients, where they want to go. He got Anthony Davis to Los Angeles. He's obviously got LeBron James to go to multiple places where he wanted to go, whether it was Cleveland. Miami was kind of a Leon Rose thing, but it seemed that Rich Paul kind of took over that. But definitely the LeBron to the Lakers, LeBron back to Cleveland, Anthony Davis to LA. He has done this game before. And apparently, again, according to the report, I'm reading this here, Rich Paul of Clutch Sports not only has a tendency to talk about Giannis, but also multiple sources agree he has been talking to Giannis' brother as of late. Rich, it seems clear, would like to represent Giannis, and despite what's happening with Anthony Davis in Dallas, it's said to have been making the case that he's the guy who can get a star player where he wants to go. Two excellent sources suggest that this is the kind of agent subterfuge. This kind of agent subterfuge is a constant undertone of NBA life, and it's not worth worrying about. Two others believe there's a very real chance that Giannis will soon have a new agent. The Player Association confirms Monday that Alex Serratis, who is the agent that Giannis is apparently very upset about, is still Giannis' agent. Teams who are trying to trade for Giannis continue to call Serratis. So right now, Serratis is still the guy, but Rich Paul is looming in the wings. Another thing about this that's noteworthy is there used to be a 15-day waiting period for if you fired your agent and then moved on to another agent. You have to give them a 15-day period before you can sign with someone new. That waiting period has been cut short now. It's no longer 15 days. Now it's only 7. So technically that would mean if Saradas, I mean, we'll see. I don't have my watch on, but the trade deadline's on the 5th. If he gets fired relatively soon, Giannis could still fire him, insert a new agent, a.k.a. Rich Paul, and have him in place prior to the trade deadline. Giannis will still have a couple days to make a decision if he wants to have a new agent to try to get him out of there. The most important thing to follow, I believe, now in the Giannis Antetokounmpo saga will be, is Al Saradas still his agent in a couple of days? That, to me, is now, if you want to find any tea leaves that something may be cooking with Giannis Antetokounmpo eventually being traded from the Bucks, we got to see who this agent is going to be in the next few days. If it's still Saradas, and again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing his name, Al Saradas, if it's him, then I would tend to think that I would be not stunned or shocked. I would lean as much more likely Giannis stays beyond the trade deadline. He gets traded in the offseason than he gets traded now. If Rich Paul, or anybody, but definitely if Rich Paul finds a way to become Giannis' agent by the time that's necessary in order to allow him to work for Giannis and then work with other teams to then facilitate a trade, then I would say, okay, this is going to happen. The ball is moving. It's moving in a major way, and look out below because something big's going to happen. We'll end up seeing, man. We'll end up seeing. But I will say, man, I do think, like I said earlier, I think I said it last week, if I would still be kind of wary if I'm the Knicks or most of these teams about really trading for Giannis this season if you're all about winning a championship this season. Because the sexy appeal of the Giannis Antetokounmpo search and the sweepstakes and the trading for him and what that means, that's all well and good. But there actually is tangible stuff on the court that you also have to worry about. And the guy is dealing with a nagging calf injury that's been bothering him all season. And he's had calf injuries throughout his career. I'm going to keep saying it. And I'm not betting and hoping on anything. But we have now seen a clear correlation between calf injuries and Achilles injuries. With the way he's been trying to get back out there, I actually saw the quotes from him today about what it was like trying to play through his calf injury just last week. He actually said, yeah, I thought it was one of those things where, he just, made a certain movement and then he felt the pull and that's when he pulled himself out of the game. No, he said his calf was hurting in the game. And apparently he was getting treatment during the game. He said, yeah, I couldn't run on my toes. I had to run on my heel because I was just feeling so much pain in my calf throughout the game. And then it wasn't until the end of the game where I felt that pop. I hear that stuff. I'm like, I'm good. You rest up. You do what you got to do to get ready for next season. Try not to get traded in the next couple of days because I promise we will try to go after you in the offseason if you're the Knicks or one of these teams. I would be very wary of trading for him now for a team that's in contention. And then, given the competitor he is, given the attention that's going to bring, that the expectation, the hope is that he's going to be ready to go for the stretch run of the postseason. And 4 to 6 weeks is not some death knell. It's not like you're saying he's never going to play for the rest of his career. But I just, considering this has become a nagging thing, I don't want a guy who's been trying to push through, now I'm learning, push through a calf injury still. He came back and was still bothered by it. He already had missed plenty of games with the calf injury. And then he felt another pull. This is a scary situation to me. And I think that's an aspect of this that it's not going to draw headlines. It's not sexy to have headline. Should Giannis keep playing due to calf injury? We want to hear Giannis wants to fire his agent. Giannis may be represented by Rich Paul in a couple of days. Like, those are the sexy headlines because it means that there could be player movement. And player movement drives the most interest in the NBA still. It still does. And I believe in many ways it always will. But his health situation is something to keep an eye on, man. It's something to keep an eye on, and it's one of the reasons why I also thought it was more unlikely that he'd get traded. But another report drops. We have these details about Giannis and just how frustrated he is with his current representation and some of the moves that are happening to potentially get him new representation. And then obviously, like I mentioned earlier, Mark Spears saying that Giannis apparently, in his eyes, he thinks that he has played his last game as a Buck. Again, my question would be, does that mean that he's going to play for another team this year? He's going to be suiting up with another team? He's going to be on another roster this season? Or does that mean yes, he's played his last game, but it's because he's got a bad calf. The team is horrendous. It does not make sense for him to come back to a team that is this bad, and he's dealing with calf injuries, and he doesn't want to be there. He's trying to get to his next destination. It makes no sense for him to come back under those circumstances. That's the case. That's another scenario, and that's something I probably could see and probably agree with. But if we're talking about, he's going to get traded in a couple of days or within a week, that would be obviously massive, massive news in the NBA. And this is going to continue to be a huge story to follow moving forward. Rich Paul apparently trying to become Giannis' agent with the hopes and the promise that he could be the one to get him to his preferred destination. Big stuff out of the NBA here. I wanted to mention this other story. I wanted to get back to the Shedeur Sanders stuff before we get into some pop culture stuff, and then we rock out of here. And we got plenty of pop culture stuff I want to get to on this show. But we got to get back to the Sanders family because only Deion, again, at a time when nothing's happening in college football, basically a lot of the big transfers have been moved to their teams. It's a little bit of a quiet period. In comes Deion Sanders, another main character, with the headline, a story that I saw that I also was kind of like, wow, really, we're doing this now? And I do think it's important to talk about. So, apparently, at Colorado, Coach Deion, or a.k.a. Coach Prime, is introducing player fines now for guys on the team. Meaning, if you you break various different rules with the team, it's no longer, hey, you're going to get benched for a quarter or a half, or you're not going to play a certain amount of snaps, or maybe you got to clean up the locker room after whatever, like that kind of stuff. No, we're not doing that anymore. Cold hard cash is what you're going to be losing if you step to Coach Prime in a wrong way, or if you violate team rules, or if you operate in a way that is embarrassing to the Colorado organization. This is now a first, I believe, in college football. I've never heard of the possibility of players being fined in college football, but this is where we're at, and this is what the breakdown was, according to what I'm seeing here. Let me share my screen so you can see this for yourself. But player fines are being introduced at Colorado. The fines will include $500 if you're late to practice, $2,500 for a no-show, $400 if you're late to a meeting or a film session. If you no-show a film session or meeting, that's $2,000. Late to conditioning, $1,000. No-show for conditioning, $1,500. Late to treatment, $1,000. No-show to treatment, $1,500. Violation of team rules, between $1,000 and $2,500, depending on what the rule was. Public or social misconduct, $2,000 to $5,000. Now, what I will say, with respect to, obviously, all people have all different financial situations, so I understand that. I'm not trying to say that $500 isn't a lot to some people, because it is. But generally speaking, this is not a ton of money in terms of, like, what we've seen in the NFL, where some of these kind of violations could get you $15, $20,000 fines. Like, we don't see that here. The fines are, again, I put in the most respectful quotation marks, relatively small. But I do have a couple of questions about this. Like, so let's start with one thing. Every guy on the team has an NIL deal? What happens to walk-ons? What happens to guys that aren't making almost anything NIL? Do they have to pay these fines? Because I would assume that, like, a normal college student doesn't have just like $2,000 to waste on no showing a film session. I would think. I don't know. Again, the college football has become such the wild, wild west that it's actually really hard to understand exactly the rules, and we'll get into a lot of that stuff in a second. But I actually don't know what a lot of that stuff means when it comes to that. Again, if you're a walk-on, you get NIL money. Does every player on the team get NIL money? Because there's some guys that are lower recruits. I would assume you wouldn't have to pay some of these guys in order to play for your team. They just take the scholarship. So that feels like a potential problem, that you got guys that are going to be fined who maybe just don't have the bread like that to actually be fined. That seems a little bit questionable, number one. Number two, though, and I think is that is serious, to be fair, but the more serious aspect of this to me, this doesn't feel like this should be legal or can be legal. Because unfortunately, we're living in the living, walking, breathing sham that is these college athletes being quote unquote student athletes. And that what they do with college football is not a job. It is them participating in a sport that goes along with their academics. And we know that's a sham. We've seen, the lid's been blown off completely on this sham in so many ways. And now we have a situation where, again, we have NIL, where players are making money now for their name and likeness, which is great. I support it 1,000%. But NIL is not teams paying guys contracts. It's not these kids being employees. Because what comes, with actual violations and rules like this, where you're now putting a monetary value on these rules and these standards that you have, typically would come collective bargaining for what is actually acceptable and what is allowed and what this group of players would actually agree to as to what is fair in terms of what kind of punishment I should have for missing a meeting or missing a practice. The players have no representation from that regard. There are no unions when it comes to college sports and college football. So it, to me, is not legal, in my opinion, that you can institute a situation where you're fining players who aren't employees and not collective bargained an agreement to come to for what is allowed for team rules and what is a fair practices from that regard. Now, look, Coach Prime, he seems to run that thing like he runs it kind of with an iron fist. It's very clear who's in charge there. I know he's obviously dealt with health issues, so he's had to step aside at times, but there's no question about who is numero uno when it comes to running that program. But at the same time, again, they're not employees. And then I know we had this whole revenue sharing deal where now the students are getting the revenue also from the schools as well. So technically speaking, NIL deals aren't supposed to be tied now to schools the way they were. NIL deals were a sham. Essentially, a team or coach would find, some boosters, come up with a business to give these kids some money and say that you're using their name and likeness. And that was essentially their school's way of getting around having to pay these guys. They were paying them through NIL. There were laws in place and rules put in place. Again, are they being followed? It seems like absolutely not. But there are rules in place and laws put in place where that was no longer supposed to be allowed. That if you were going to have an NIL deal, it was supposed to be, it's tied to some brand. So if Gatorade wants to sign you to a $100,000 contract, then Gatorade is signing you to that. It's not some booster who has some BS company that he's created that he's not paying you money through and he's just using your name and likeness. It's not some wink deal through the school. So if we're talking about actual kids who are not getting paid by the school really, and you're talking about you're just taking their NIL money, well, that seems to violate a ton of, again, laws and rules as well. This is a little problematic to me. I'll be honest, it's a little problematic. Again, I know it's not for a lot of the better players in Colorado. Obviously, this is not backbreaking money to lose $500 for being late to a practice. Some of these kids are making probably more than $1 million on that roster. But this can't be allowed. It will be allowed because again, Coach Prime rules this thing with iron fist. So who the hell is going to challenge him? But it shouldn't. I feel like it should be challenged. You could challenge this through the legal system. I think it should be challenged just off principle that this is, you cannot put together these kind of rules where you're now again financially penalizing your players without any representation regarding what has been actually collectively bargained for the rules of the team and what these guys are. They are not employees. They're students. You're finding students because they were late to a film session, because they were late to a strength and conditioning workout, because they missed a practice. That's not that's it creates headlines and Dion, he wants to create headlines. He wants to show that he's run a professional team and he's going to want to do things his way. On the surface, if this was what it's supposed to be, which is actual employees for these schools essentially, I wouldn't have as big an issue with it. But that's not where we're at right now in college football. There's a lot more work to be done to get us to that point. We're not there. So to say that you're going to do this and you're going to find players without, again, any collective bargaining or the fact that you haven't designated these people as employees is just is unconstitutional. I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like it's unconstitutional. I would love to have someone legal actually try to figure out if that's the case, but I can't see that is something that would be legal in any sense of the word. So I don't know. Deion instituting fines for his players at Colorado. Are you for it? Are you against it? What do you think? Is it fair? I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Just from, again, the basis of if you're going to do that, then they need to be collective bargaining rules in place for what working conditions are like at Colorado. Like, again, let's go. Do the right thing. Put the mechanisms in place to get where we need to get to, which is these guys being represented as employees who have worker rights, not student athletes who you can fine because they were late to something or they violated your arbitrary rules that were not negotiated. It's simple. It's simple to me. So that is something that I think I would consider I would consider looking into. I'm looking at, I see what Ryan Jones said. You should be able to take care of this with old-fashioned steps, like steps. That's a fair point, man. And to be honest, that is also maybe that's a funny line. But to talk about, and I say that thing again, like typically, oh, you're late to a meeting or whatever. All right, go run some stairs. Go run the track. Again, these were the things you typically did. I remember, I know he's not at all, he's kind of disgraced. Not kind of, he is disgraced in many ways. But I remember like Joe Paterno when like his team had like team violations, and some of them actually more serious, and he was criticized for it. He would like have his team like clean Beaver Stadium after a Saturday game. Like that was their punishment. It's all right. Now you got to clean the stadium, not the cleaning crew. They'll still get paid. You players got to clean up because you guys were being jerks or whatever. Again, these are the kind of things that coaches used to do back in the day. The fines is like, it does speak to maybe the level of desperation and how bad maybe things are at Colorado. The reporting on Colorado, I don't really. The negative reporting, I don't really trust, just because we've seen just kind of crazy things completely out of nowhere, and it has always been well sourced. I know Deion's been very upset about that, but I mean, there has been some reporting and some whispers about like the culture there not being the greatest. It might be a sign that like things aren't the greatest, where you feel like the only way you can get your players to show up to meetings on time and do the right thing is to fine them. Like that's what the fact that you even have to go to that step. I do agree with Bomani Jones. I think that's a fair point. It does raise an eyebrow to me of like, what is going on there? Like, especially Deion Sanders, he's an old school guy. Like he's in many ways he kind of coaches in a way that's kind of old school, and about like kind of like old school traditional values. Kind of, he's a traditional values old school kind of coach in many ways. I know he has the flash and dash of being prime, but that I think comes from similar to how he mentions that prime time, the persona as a player, was really just a way for him to make money, and that at the end of the day he's still Deion, and all that comes with hard work, comes with being the best, and an incredible drive to win, a maniacal drive to win. I think of Coach Prime, I assume, to be the same thing. That Coach Prime is the guy that's hanging out with Lil Wayne and getting the rock on the sidelines. That's the persona to get kids want to come to Colorado. But again, the things we've heard about Colorado and the things he said publicly, a lot of this stuff is like old school stuff. Sit in the front of class. Don't come into the facility wearing slides and flip flops. You gotta wear sneakers. I saw another clip that said don't wear your old school's gear around the facility. You're only allowed to wear Colorado gear. That to me again sounds like traditional value, old school kind of coaching. This doesn't. Again, this is unprecedented from what I could tell, that you're going to fine your own players. But I'd have real questions about whether or not that actually is even legal or allowed. So definitely quite a bizarre story out of Colorado. But I'm wondering how far this goes. And I haven't seen a huge groundswell of people complaining about it. So I think he's going to get away with it. I don't think he should, though. I do think that's something that absolutely should be challenged, because at some point we gotta figure this thing out. We cannot have this wild wild west where at Colorado they're finding guys and other schools aren't. Again, the wild wild west of the transfer portal and what's allowed, the tampering, it's completely out of control. Completely out of control. And like I don't think it's one of those things where it's destroying the sport. Like there's some people that have gone, to great lengths of how bad things are. Listen, that Indiana Miami game was the most watched national championship game like almost ever, I think. Like people love college football. People are invested in college football. I know people were saying the college football playoffs is going to hurt, the postseason and national championship games. That has been far from the truth. The interest, and I thought it was that way, but I'm a Miami fan. I try to like not make judgments until I see real numbers, just because you never know. But I felt the buzz for that Indiana Miami game, even though it was happening on a Monday night after the NFL playoffs. I still felt like when the day came, people were really, really invested and definitely were saying they were going to watch, and then the numbers bore all that out. College football is still red hot. They have lost nothing when it comes to the players getting paid. They said that ruined the sport. I see fans still in the stadiums, packing stadiums, TV ratings still through the roof. That hasn't changed anything. They said the college football playoff, expanding it more and more was going to kill the sport. Again, I saw a college football playoff final that had one team in Indiana who has zero footprint when it comes to college football, and Miami, who every Miami hater has been telling me for the last 25 years, you guys haven't been relevant for 2 decades, and 30 million people watched. So, again, miss me with making the kind of changes necessary to improve the sport from just a legal aspect and just a make sense aspect. Miss me with that's going to hurt the sport in some major way. College football, I think, is kind of like the NFL now, where I think it's kind of too big to fail. So I don't think this should be allowed. And I think it stems from me feeling like we got to get this thing figured out with the whole, are they employees, are they student athletes, what are their rights, and if they have rights and we're going to make them athletes, then let's get them a union and let's work this thing out and get real rules in place. Let's make this a real league like the NFL. The fact that we're still playing this game and this charade is silly to me. ZJ Stewart, man, this is 40 days, 40 nights. Again, I do these live streams twice a day. Did one earlier, 8 a.m. I do that every weekday. We did this one starting around 6 p.m., 8 a.m., 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. We do these episodes. Of course, you can catch all of them on our YouTube channel, New Generation Media. That is where all these videos obviously live as well, moving forward beyond just the live stream. But if you want to watch live, there are folks who are watching live on YouTube. Shout out to them. Appreciate you guys. You can follow us on their New Generation Media. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well. New Generation Media as well is, of course, the way you subscribe. And watch the video. Give us a like. Give us a comment. Give us a shout out. Whatever you want. All that engagement, again, helps and supports the channel, so I greatly appreciate that. We're also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Also streaming live on Instagram, IG Live, Action EJ. Make sure you also follow me on TikTok as well, Action EJ. That's where you can find me. The social media handles for both our X account for New Generation Media and our Instagram account is scrolling on the bottom right now, at New Generation Pod on X, at New Generation Podcast on Instagram. And like I say every episode, all these live streams we do, we're now on 9/11. They all get podcasted onto our podcast channel. New Generation Podcast Network is what you'll search wherever you get your podcast. So if you want to, if you're on the go, if you're traveling, if you're working out, you can listen to your boy doing this podcast / live stream / show, whatever you want to call it. You can listen to it wherever you get your podcast. 40 days and 40 nights. All the episodes get uploaded to our New Generation Podcast Network channel. That's what you'll search wherever you get your podcast. You'll get not only this show, but all of our other shows, Hero Talk, Imperial Broadcast, which is our Star Wars podcast, Off Script, our wrestling podcast. All those live, including 40 Days and 40 Nights. All those live on our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network. I said there was a bunch of pop culture stuff to get to, and I want to get to it now because there were some things that were happening over the weekend and happened today that I have major questions about. So let's begin with something that I thought was some pretty big news that I saw over the weekend. And it's a report that it seems like there's a chance when we get to Avengers Secret Wars, which is due to come out in 2 years, essentially. We have Avengers Doomsday, which is going to star Robert Downey in his first role as Dr. Doom. He previously played Iron Man. Now he's playing Dr. Doom. It's a mega movie. There's all these different actors and characters from multiple corners of the Marvel Universe There are Avengers in this. There are Thunderbolt / New Avengers in this. Thor's obviously in it. The Fox X-Men people are in this. The Wakanda corner of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is involved there. This is a massive, massive cast. We now know Steve Rogers, obviously played by Chris Evans, is also going to be a part of this. This is going to be a huge, huge movie. That movie comes out this year. The following year, Avengers Secret Wars is due out. That movie is supposed to follow directly into this. That movie is supposed to follow directly after what happens in Doomsday. Now the reporting is that this Secret Wars movie could be split into 2 parts, meaning there'll be a movie, Avengers Secret Wars Part 1, Avengers Secret Wars Part 2. Here's what I'll say. We've been hearing early reports that the runtime for this Doomsday movie could go very long. Like, definitely more than 3 hours. So that tells you that this is a big undertaking that they are going to do. And it makes sense given the amount of characters and cast members that they're throwing into this. It feels like Marvel is putting all their chips into the table to ensure that this is the biggest movie they've ever made. And they've made those kind of comments before, but I don't think they're bluffing with this one. We know how big Infinity War and Endgame were. I think they're trying to top that with definitely Doomsday, and I think eventually when they get to Secret Wars. So you're talking about a bloated runtime for Doomsday that's been reported, that's been rumored. That, by the way, I'm fine with. It's not going to be for everybody, but a lot of people are going to see it. I don't think they'll have problems getting people to the box office for Doomsday, even though we've heard about Marvel fatigue and superhero fatigue. I think this movie, in terms of, we saw the billion views they've gotten for their various different teasers. I would certainly expect there to be probably a full trailer for Doomsday during the Super Bowl as well. I think they will be fine in terms of getting people to the box office despite what may be a 3+ hour runtime. But what they're trying to accomplish, and if they're going to give Secret Wars and Doomsday, is full justice in terms of not rushing through a story, giving characters real time, really showing us different corners of whatever battle world's going to look like in Secret Wars. It very well could need 2 parts. What I am concerned about is the report that it will only be determined by how Avengers Doomsday is received. Which, that part of it almost makes you wonder if it's true. And this is, by the way, being reported by Daniel Richtman, who kind of runs his own business as a Marvel, DC, really overall movie insider. He's a very good reporter. We've covered his stories a ton on Hero Talk, and I wouldn't be bringing this to you if I didn't think there was some legs to it, because he usually gets good scoops. But that aspect of it did make me pause, because you won't know how good this movie does until the earliest December. So where are you going to be where you're going to be in a position where you're like, we're going to either split this movie into 2 or make it into 1 movie? Because to me, it only makes sense to make this 2 different movies if it's like, it has to be at least 3.5 hours, right? Secret Wars? Because you say, okay, if it's 3.5 hours, you say, okay, maybe one movie is 1 hour and 50 minutes and the other movie is 1 hour and 50 minutes. Or one movie's 2 hours and the other movie's 1.5 hours. But then that feels like kind of a short movie if you're doing that. I don't think they're going to do that. Like, I don't know how you get to, because to me, if it's 2 parts, I would expect those to be at least 2 hours of movie, 2 hours of content. If you're going to do it, are we in a situation where we're talking about, we don't know if we're going to cut this movie that we haven't shot yet from a 4-hour plus movie to a 2-part movie? Or are you deciding that we don't know if this needs to be a 4-hour movie or a 3-hour movie? Like, that is where I'm having trouble figuring out how they can make the determination that the movie they have could very well be 4 hours, or 2 parts. That doesn't quite make sense. And I don't love the idea that their strategy is based purely on just people reacting to Doomsday. I don't know what that had to do with anything. The only thing I can think of is maybe Doomsday's runtime is really bloated. Like, maybe it's, and we've heard rumors that maybe it's closer to 3:30, maybe 3:40. Like, maybe it's super bloated and they're like, you know what, we're going to try to give you a 3 hour and 40 minute movie and see if you guys will sit through this and if you will like it. And then maybe they'll see, hey, if it didn't go well, you know what? We're making Avengers Secret Wars. Now it's 2 parts. But again, one of the issues Marvel has had, and it's one of the things that actually has given me a lot of hope that they will get it right with Doomsday, is it's been this kind of haphazard creative process where, you know, and James Gunn has kind of, I think, thrown some slick shots about saying, oh, at DC, we're not doing projects or films until scripts are finished. And it's like, well, who else is he talking about in terms of who's doing movies and shows where scripts aren't finished? Now, I know there are actual, that's been a thing in, like, especially television, where, like, they don't have the finished script at the end of the final episode written, but they're still filming and they're still going through everything. I remember there was a season of Flash where I think that was the case. I think it was a Savitar season, I believe, where they didn't have written yet by the mid-season finale what the end was. Sure enough, it was a terrible ending to that season. It was really the beginning of the decline of Flash. And to James Gunn's point, I think he's right. I think it doesn't make sense to push forward stories that don't have scripts and still say we're going to make it anyway. And begin making it even without the script being finished. Sometimes they'll actually start filming and shooting without scripts being made. But to me, James Gunn is just saying that out of thin air. I don't think he's just mentioning some sitcom that nobody's talking about, some comedy show nobody's talking about. I think he's working from experience a little bit regarding what he has seen with people he's worked with, and we know he's worked with Marvel. So I get the impression that has been the case at Marvel, where they probably have started the process of doing movies that didn't have scripts. They damn sure have announced movies that don't have scripts. We know that with Blade, which is now apparently on the cutting room floor, rumored to be, where they announced that this movie was going to happen. Didn't have a director, didn't have a screenwriter. They've now gone through several different directors, several different writers. I believe they did shoot some stuff and then just scrapped it all. They could never figure out how to do the Blade movie. So, and needless to say, all of this is extremely haphazard work, in my opinion. I don't think this is how you create the best movies, to create the best content, the best anything. So Marvel doing this we have a plan, 2 parts, but only if we get a certain reaction from Doomsday. It doesn't speak to conviction about what you're doing, which is a little concerning. And to me, also, again, like, just because they reacted one way to Doomsday, unless you're telling me again that the idea is that we have a really bloated runtime, and if fans react negatively to that, we're not going to give you that again. That's one thing, okay? That I can maybe live with, but is it, do we like the movie? Do we not like the movie? Like, I don't want that to be the part of it. Like, the reception to the movie, just in terms of, like, whether or not people like this is what is going to determine whether or not it's 2 parts. Is it a money grab? Where you're like, hey, we can get an extra $1 billion if we just split this thing into another year. Like, those are all very bad motivations for this to be part of the conversation. When Avengers Secret War was pitched years and years ago, it was pitched as a 2-part movie. And I think everyone understood and agreed. It made sense. Then it became Kang Dynasty and then Secret Wars. So we thought, okay, I guess maybe the first part is now going to be Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars. Then, of course, we had what happened with Jonathan Majors. He gets fired. He gets ostracized. And now we're moving with Dr. Doom being the main villain of this end of the multiverse arc. Now the conversation becomes back to now 2 parts with a whole different director, a whole different script and everything. That gives me a little pause. The first time makes me question just a little bit about the direction they're going. I'm still team, this is going to be awesome. I really do. I really think that Doomsday is going to be great. I think that Secret Wars is going to be great. I'm really excited for it. But despite a lot of the criticism I've had from Marvel for the past several years, this report feels strange. I'm kind of hoping it's not true. I'm hoping that they know what they're going to do. It's going to be either 1 movie or 2 parts, and they're just waiting to announce it. We don't know what it's going to be until December, when that movie, by the way, again, Secret Wars comes out the following year. That's why I think it's ridiculous, because it's like, in theory, like, it's not like your final cut of the movie should be done, but you should be well down the line of post-production for Secret Wars by the time Doomsday comes out. So the idea that you either could be finishing post-production, or you could have been done post-production, made it one movie, and then sort of reacted and said, okay, let's go back into the lab and cut this movie in half. Again, and especially just how movies work. There's a natural, natural storytelling. Beginning, middle, end. There's a climax. There's a penultimate climax. Like, there's ways that movies kind of just flow and function. I don't think that just on the fly you can have 4.5 hours of a movie and say, oh, I can just kind of whatever, just cut this in half and it'll be fine. I don't think that it doesn't work that way to me. I don't think it really makes sense. Now the Russos, their original plan was when they were doing, because they did both Endgame and Infinity War, that was originally supposed to be a 2-part movie. It's supposed to be Infinity War Part 1 and Infinity War Part 2. How they decided then that they felt like when they actually wrote the movie, and they had writers as well, but when they were making the movie was written, they kind of saw the script, they felt like it made more sense as this movie is one movie and this movie is another movie. Which, by the way, if you watch those two movies, I totally agree. There is definitely, there's literally a time jump. Like, you jump 5 years or whatever. So, are we gonna have another time jump? Like, is that a reason why it would make sense to do that? I don't know, but for them, it's like it's literally, we're in a different time period. It's different characters that are involved. Like, it makes sense to actually make this just one movie is Infinity War, the other one is Endgame. It's the heist to get back the Infinity Stones to bring everybody back from the previous movie. That, I think, was the right call once they kind of started working. They realized that. They didn't wait till see at a certain point, well, how do they feel about Captain Marvel? That's going to determine whether or not we, decide this or whatever. So that aspect I thought was smart, and it makes sense because they were doing it through the process. They got to make a decision. Just like you're working through the process now, you're almost done with Doomsday. You're about to start Secret Wars. Figure out, does it need to be 2 parts? Does it need to be 1 part? I feel uneasy about the aspect that they're gonna wait to see how fans react. You gotta have some conviction in what you're doing. You can't work in this idea because fans are fickle. They may not like a super long Doomsday movie, but then you may give them 2 parts of a Secret Wars movie. They say, oh, the first part was too short, we needed more, or it didn't make sense to have it be so disconnected. Like, it just seems weird. It just seems weird. And again, I don't like the aspect that, like, one seems like a great monetary benefit to Marvel in Disney, and why you would make it 2 parts. And I don't want that to be in any way the influence for what happens. Now, if you tell me we have 5 hours of content and we don't know what to do with it, well, a 5-hour movie may be a little much. A 4-hour movie may be a little much for somebody. That is another story. But again, that's where I think you need to be looking at your content, looking at your script, and now saying we got to fix this script to make it 2 parts, not see what the fans say and see if we can get away with this. I don't like that idea at all. But that is apparently a report that I found quite interesting from Daniel RPK, that Marvel is right now trying to figure out whether or not Secret Wars should be 2 parts, and that it actually may end up being 2 parts depending on the fan reaction to Doomsday. Other news around pop culture that was crazy to me was WWE announcing WWE 2K26 set to come out on, I believe, January 30th is the pre-sale or pre-order dates. I actually don't know when the official release date is. I'm not sure if they've actually put that out yet. But pre-orders begin on January 30th, and they've been revealing for the last week all these different versions of the game. So people got really excited because they announced, obviously, WWE 2K is coming out, and they announced this cover that you see on what is technically my top left, but it looks like your top right, I guess, or vice versa. They came out with this cover, which, by the way, gas. I think this is an awesome, phenomenal cover. I'm fully aware as a wrestling fan that Triple H has the wrong belt on it. He has the big gold belt, which of course was not during the Attitude Era. But they announced the Attitude Era edition of WWE 2K, and it includes this gorgeous cover that includes Kane, Undertaker, Stone Cold, Triple H, HBK, The Rock, Kurt Angle, Lita, Stephanie McMahon, Trish Stratus, Chyna, and the Dudley Boys. It's an awesome, beautiful cover. It's one of the best covers they've done. I know there's a little gap with the Triple H, but outside of that, this is a dope ass cover. And I was like, steal my money, man. I'm all in. I'm ready to go. I am someone who does play WWE 2K. I will admit it's one of those games that I kind of play for like 2 months, and I kind of get away from it for a long time. Once the show comes out or some other sports game comes out. I actually started playing 2K5 recently once this trailer came out, and I kind of this cover came out, and I was like, oh snap, this is actually really dope. This is actually a really fun game. And I thought 2K5 was pretty good. So I thought, okay, cool. That's interesting. Attitude Era Edition, I'm down with it. And I thought that probably was going to be it. And then over the weekend, this came out. There's also a Monday Night Wars edition of WWE 2K. Now, WWE 2K has had multiple editions. They usually do multiple editions of a game always. Not always, but most years. So it's not like shocking there are multiple editions. They're going for some of the bigger storylines and bigger eras of wrestling. Both of these actually entail the Attitude Era because Monday Night Wars happened during the Attitude Era. So this cover obviously has some of the ones in the first cover: Austin, Rock, Taker, Hunter, Kurt Angle, and Chyna. But now on the other flip side, you got Hulk, you got Kevin Nash, you got Scott Hall, one of my all-time favorites. One of the reasons why I throw up the Too Sweet every time I take a photo. Goldberg, Booker T, and Eric Bischoff. That is another edition of this game. So I said, okay, now this one, and I've told folks a bunch, and I think I've said this on podcasts before, I say it all the time, there are certain things with me that will always grab my attention and will always steal my money. You give me anything about the Monday Night Wars, I am 100% it. It doesn't matter. I could watch a zillion documentaries on it. I could watch a zillion different podcasts on it. You give me merch, you give me anything about the Monday Night Wars, I'm in. It's the time that made me a wrestling fan. It's why I am a wrestling fan. So you want to say I'm a sucker? Call me a sucker. I love the Monday Night Wars. I came in as actually a huge WCW fan. I was a WCW fan before I became a WWE fan. The Monday Night Wars were foundational for my childhood and who I am as a person, I would argue. So I saw this and I said, okay, I thought I was going to get the Attitude Era cover. Monday Night War edition it is. That's where we're going. Bam. And I thought we were done. Because typically it's like we give you 2 editions and then we'll give you the standard edition that will have some current WWE star on the cover. But apparently we weren't done. Because then today we learned this. A King of Kings edition is also another edition, a part of this WWE 2K26 rollout. This obviously features the man known as the King of Kings, Triple H, with that same gold belt. It's actually the same picture from the first shot, but this is him fully in the focus of this. When I first saw this, I actually thought, oh, okay, dope. This is the standard edition. He's the cover. A little weird. It's an older star, but it's a cool cover, so I wasn't really hating on it. Kind of funny that the guy that runs the company is like, oh, put me on the cover of the game. And in fact, he's on now all 3 covers of the game so far. But nonetheless, I was like, okay, fine. But then I read at the top, wait, no, that says King of Kings edition. This is now another special edition of this game. To the point where I'm like, well, how many editions of this game are you making? Like what? Like there has to be, I assume, a standard edition. Like I don't think that this is the only edition, the main edition of the game. There's going to be now a regular edition. So I mean, there'd be 4 different versions of this video game. And listen, like I said before, I love WWE 2K. They've had some bad years. There's some terrible games they put out. I think since the hiatus they took, the games since then have been pretty good. I thought last year's game was really good. But I will say that I'm hoping this isn't, and I'm hoping against hope probably, that they're kind of trying to bait us with nostalgia and bait us with, oh, look, we put on all your favorite characters from the Attitude Era. And that's why you need to give us $99.99 to pay for this special edition of 2K, or pay the $129 it'll probably cost for the Monday Night War edition of WWE 2K. And what this may entail to me, given someone who plays the game, is as cool as these covers are, and to me they're worth the point where I probably will buy a physical, and I haven't bought a physical game in forever at this point. All these characters have kind of been in the game. Everyone, I don't know, maybe China. I think China has 2 at this point. Yeah. Every one of these characters has been in 2K before. I think almost all of them are in last year's game. Austin, Rock, Taker, Triple H, Angle, China, Hollywood, Nash, Hall, Goldberg. These are people that are 2K staples. So what I'm wondering, and I'm kind of hoping, which I don't think is going to happen, is I hope that it's not just, here's a cool cover, here's some what would be DLC characters that you can't get if you get the standard edition. Get them in the Monday Night Wars edition, and by the way, here's like 100 million VC. That's what video games have been doing, and it's really annoying, and it bothers me. It's a cash grab. We know what the time it is, but I would hope there actually is something more tangible than just that. Like, I hope it's you have a game mode where you're going through the Monday Night Wars, and it's actually funny. I know most people have said it. It's right before I started getting to buying WWE's video games, but or at least the newer era ones. But WWE 13 essentially kind of did this, where they did the Attitude Era Monday Night Wars, marketing, and there was a mode in the game where you played through the Monday Night Wars. So part of me is like, that was a different company. It wasn't 2K doing the games. That was THQ that was doing those games at the time. So in fairness to them, this would kind of maybe be their first go around at actually trying to do something this expansive. But I'm hoping it's not just here's a cool cover, here's some DLC characters that you already would have typically and we've had in the past, and give me $130. That is probably what's happening here, and that would be kind of a bummer because I don't think that's necessarily the coolest thing. I'm kind of hopeful that maybe they're trying to go big here and give us something really, really awesome, and possibly, again, we know the showcase is going to be CM Punk. We talked about that last week. Like, what are the different game modes that will possibly be available? What matches will be available? I'm excited about that aspect of it. I'm hoping maybe there's a bonus showcase. Maybe you could also do a showcase with the Attitude Era, or a showcase with the Monday Night Wars, where you're playing through some of the key matches through the Attitude Era or WCW during the Nitro Era, right? Like, I'm hoping that we get that. I'm hoping it's not simply we're just slapping on a cover, giving you some characters that we probably should have gave you anyway, and making you pay an extra $50. That is likely what's happening. And the fact that we're going now to a third edition that now has Triple H as one of the editions, now it's okay. This is going to be the lowest one where it's like, okay, you can't get any of those Attitude Era people or the Monday Night Wars people, and you get no VC, but here's 3 models of Triple H that actually are finally de-aged, because that was one of the problems they've had with Triple H too, where in the game they show this is 98 Triple H, or this is 2000 Triple H, or this is 2005 Triple H, and he looks like the exact same Triple H from 2025, but just with hair. They just gave him long hair. And obviously Triple H has gotten a lot older now. So I'm hoping they put some effort in this, and this isn't just a complete cash grab. I will say these covers are all sick. I think this is a sick cover. I think the Monday Night Wars cover, again, I saw this, I was like, well, adios to the Attitude Era cover. This is the one I'm going for. This is also really cool. It actually also, I think, is actually a little bit, it's actually, I think, also a little bit, influenced by some of the other wrestling covers from the past, too, in this particular one. Because there are some wrestling covers from that era of the Monday Night Wars that actually were similar to this. So the cover's dope. Monday Night War edition, you stole my money. It's going to happen. But, again, hopefully it's more than just simply, here's a cool cover, here's some characters we should have gave you, and give us extra cash. That's probably what's happening, but I'm holding out hope that maybe there's something bigger at foot what's going on with WWE 2K. So a couple more things, man, before we get out of here. This is one story I got to figure out. And eventually I got to get my guy, maybe Ray Jarvis back. He's a hip-hop fan. I also, maybe I'll see if I can get Shamari Stewart on the show maybe tomorrow, because he's a big hip-hop fan. He's a big Kid Cudi fan. There was a conversation that happened over the course via social media that took off like wildfire. Why this was the day to adjudicate this issue, I don't know. But everyone seemed to want to figure out who was responsible for the rapper Kid Cudi becoming the star that he became. I thought it was pretty simple. It was himself. He just was a big star. And then obviously being signed by Kanye West was massive for him. But I didn't really think much of it. I didn't think there was something that was all that controversial. But apparently it is. Because questions loomed about whether or not Jim Jones and New York City was a real reason why Kid Cudi got famous. And I'm putting the question to the audience. If you're a hip-hop fan, you're a music fan, please weigh in. Because I've been trying to learn about this situation as a Kid Cudi fan, as a New Yorker, as a New York hip-hop fan, and it's still not all 100% computing for me. So it began with this post from DJ Black, who does like, a YouTube show where he does a lot of interviews with various different hip hop figures. He also interviews sports figures as well. And I don't know if he said this on his podcast / YouTube video or if there was an earlier tweet. I don't know. I only picked up the ball at this point where he posted, "People are roasting Jim Jones." I don't know when Jim Jones said this. Jim Jones, of course, the rapper of Dipset. "People are roasting Jim Jones for saying he's the reason Kid Cudi blew up. But he's absolutely right. No one knew who Kid Cudi was until Jim Jones did the Day and Night remix. Keep in mind, this was off the heels of Ballin', the biggest, I don't know why I said it like that, Ballin', but we know what it is. That song's called We Fly High, by the way. But we fly, no lie, you know this, Ballin', right? We all know that song. This is off the heels of Ballin', his biggest song ever. I remember hanging out in the studio with Cudi and playing Pat when Cudi told us that Jim tried to press him to sign over the song to him, which ultimately didn't happen. Kid Cudi is opened up and responded, being like, "This is cap. This is Jim Jones is not the reason why I became famous or why Day and Night became like a smash hit song." He just denied it. Jim Jones has actually come out also and said that he is responsible, and that in fact his guy helped. His intern shot Cudi's video. Cudi asked him to shoot the video. There was all these other details that I never heard of, and again until today, this week. And listen, I'm a huge hip hop fan. I will be clear, I'm a New Yorker, so I got love for Jim Jones. No disrespect to Jim Jones at all. I got love for Dipset. Obviously, I know he has some issues with them right now, but obviously I got a lot of respect for Jim Jones. But I gotta be real, man. I was yesterday years old when I learned that Jim Jones had a Day and Night remix. Completely did not know. And this is where, when I watched the dialogue happen on the internet, and I saw a lot of people who are big fans of Kid Cudi, or just big fans of music, being like, Jim Jones had zero influence in me becoming a fan of Kid Cudi or knowing who Kid Cudi was. Then there are people in New York, where I'm from, where I currently live, they're like, well, no, they were playing Jim Jones's remix on Hot 97, and Hot 97 was playing that song. The first time I heard that beat, the first time I heard that song was Jim Jones's voice. That was my only reference to Day and Night until then, months and months later, when Kid Cudi and Day and Night became more of part of the conversation. I will say this. I'm going to be, again, like I said before, I am a New Yorker. I will be honest, this is 08, so I'm riding around with my friends, so I'm listening to radio for sure. Radio at that point in time, let's be clear, let's be fair, let's be honest, was seeing whatever you think of radio now is, in terms of its lack of impact, it was beginning back then. It was not what it is now. I'm not saying that radio had no influence. It still had a big influence. But it was beginning then. In fact, it's the blog era. The whole part of the blog era was the fact that the artists realized they actually didn't need radio to become stars. So yes, of course, we knew. So, not to, once again, also disrespect Hot 97 or anything, but this felt like a narrative and a story that was happening over the weekend. It felt like New Yorkers thought that everyone was with them, and we're at times more isolated than we realize. It's unfathomable to say that Jim Jones is the reason why Kid Cudi is famous or why Day and Night is a smash hit song. It's unfathomable. It's completely, utterly ridiculous. During this discourse, someone had taken a screenshot. I wish I found it. Someone had taken a screenshot of the amount of views up until that day. So remember, at this point now, because a lot of people are learning about the song, they're actually going to hear the Jim Jones remix of Day and Night. There are all these people, so that day, people took screenshots of the amount of YouTube views Day and Night from Kid Cudi has, and the amount of YouTube views Jim Jones's Day and Night had. Jim Jones's Day and Night had, I think, 900,000 views when I saw on Sunday. 900,000. And I'm not poo-pooing 900,000. I have nothing like 900,000 views on my YouTube videos. I don't know if I have 1 million views total, so I'm not dissing Jim Jones, but 900,000 views, okay? Take that into perspective. Day and Night, the actual song, as of Sunday, had 95 million views. I'm sorry, you don't get to say that the song that has 900,000 views, that is so well known, is responsible for why the original version has 95 million views. That it just it doesn't compute. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't. That is ridiculous. And I don't know how this became this conversation, and this became again, like, folks look at New Yorkers and they say, why don't you like New Yorkers? Well, because you guys are arrogant and you guys are delusional. And I'm a New Yorker, and I fight those charges every time they come up. This was maybe the first time in my life when I said, you know what, them folks may got a point. Because that boy, Kid Cudi, became an international superstar, and he remains a legend in hip-hop. And to be clear, like, he has spent time in Brooklyn. I think that, like, New York is absolutely a part of his story. It's a part of his fan base, for sure. Jim Jones is not in any reasonable way. In terms of his stardom, you want to talk about, hey, like, that Jim Jones remix is hot in New York, and, like, you want to put him kind of tangentially near Kid Cudi. Okay, fine. I was in New York. I heard the song for the first time, I think, this weekend. I don't remember hearing it in 2008, 2009 when I was being introduced to Kid Cudi. And when I was being introduced to Kid Cudi, it was from other New Yorkers. I do not remember one New Yorker ever telling me, oh, Jim Jones did this remix of Day and Night you should listen to from this guy, Kid Cudi. I've never once heard that. I heard, I'll be real, and I'm keeping 100. I'm keeping 100 show. It was like a lot of my college friends, my white boy friends, I'm keeping 100. It was them that were really put me on to Kid Cudi in that way. And they weren't talking about no damn Jim Jones. I'm sorry, they weren't. It just, I'm keeping it real. I'm keeping it honest. I didn't hear that. I haven't heard it since. And people, I saw shout out to Kazim Famuyide. I know he obviously worked at Hot 97, so he may have a case in wanting to put him in there. Oh, my audio's cutting out. Hopefully it's not too bad there. Maybe I might send a weird spot. But no, I know, he may have a say and kind of wanting to coach. Oh no, Hot 97 was key to Kid Cudi. I'm not saying they had no impact on his story. I mean, we know how important New York radio is, especially, again, during that time. But, I mean, my thing is all crazy. Let me just hold this joint. But to say that, again, Kid Cudi, he got famous because of Jim Jones. Because that's the original, that was a statement. It was not that, he, like people first started hearing about Cudi a little bit. Like, again, the quote from this thing was, people roasting Jim Jones for saying he's the reason Cudi blew up, but he's absolutely right. No, he's not. Newsflash. No, he's not. He is not the reason Cudi blew up. You want to say he's the reason why New Yorkers learned about the song and the beat? That's not how I learned it. But sure, some New Yorkers, they're saying that that's true. I'm not saying they're lying. That he blew up. Again, think about how famous Kid Cudi became. That he blew up at that time because of Jim Jones. And by the way, We Fly High, that remix was not right off of We Fly High. We Fly High, I think, was like 2006. I was in high school, like early in high school, when I might have been a freshman. And Kid Cudi was not even a thought when We Fly High came out. So it wasn't like Jim Jones was like red hot at that point in time. Was he a big name? Yes, for sure. But even that was a little bit misleading. But come on, guys. New Yorkers, I know we have no shame. I know we wear our hip hop badge with pride. This got a little ridiculous. This is a step too far. And again, I've seen some people on there, like shout out to my guy Jesse in the chat over on Instagram Live saying I've never heard the Jim Jones remix. I never heard this remix, man. And again, I'm a hip hop fan. I'm one of those kids and young people who was scouring for all different freestyles on all different kinds of beats throughout that blog era moment. If it happened, I don't remember it. That's the thing about it, is that, like, even if I heard the song, I don't remember it, so it could not have been that memorable. I always will remember when I heard Day and Night, not the day, but like, you know what I mean. Like, I remember being a young person hearing Day and Night, seeing Kid Cudi's rise. I don't remember any aspect of Jim Jones being part of that. You know what I'm saying? I see Jesse also putting here, and I've seen this a bunch. That people said the Chainsmoker remix of Night and Day blew him up. Or then he actually replaced it. Yeah, it was a Crookers remix. I've seen people say that too. I'm also not familiar with that. I'm not saying that that's wrong either. But I saw more people who kept saying this. Actually, I heard it from Crookers, not Jim Jones. So what are we doing here, New York? We can't just take credit for everything. I know we want to. I know we think we're the center of the universe. And damn it, I wear that New York pride with honor. I do radio in New York City. But we got to have some shame. And I felt bad. I'm a huge Kid Cudi fan. And I feel like Kid Cudi's probably looking at New York a whole different way now. Because all these crazy New Yorkers are being like, yeah, we made you, Cudi. I'm like, no, we didn't. We had a big part of his career. Again, he lived here at times. He did a lot of shows in Brooklyn. He has ties here, no question. But Jim Jones and Hot 97 is the reason why Cudi blew up. That's a lie. This is not true. A complete, utter lie. Crazy. So last thing I want to get to, man, before I got out of here, this is actually going to be one of my longer shows, but I think I'm going to get you out on a good time real quick, is I'm excited about this, man. And I don't know, I saw the reaction online initially, and people were like, haven't we had enough? Damn it, I've not had enough. I'm ready for more. We got a new season of Love is Blind, people. Love is Blind is coming back. Season 10 on Netflix, February 11th. Always right in time around Valentine's Day, which is always quite ironic because this show is very explosive. Now, for those who may not know what Love is Blind is, like I mentioned, because of my fiance, I have become, I don't want to say a reality show head, but I do dabble intensely in certain reality show franchises. I mentioned now The Traitors becoming the newest person or newest show as a part of this thing. I talk a bunch, whether it's been on Maggie and Perloff or on my WFN shows, about how much I love The Bachelor and The Bachelorette and Bachelor in Paradise. Those are like the other prong of this. Like Bachelor is like the main prong. It was really a two-headed monster for reality TV. There are other shows I kind of dabble in. Summer House, Martha's Vineyard on Bravo. Andrea watched some Real Housewives. I may dabble and watch a little bit. I'm not really invested in those shows. Mostly invested in The Bachelor. Now invested in Traitors. The other one, Love is Blind. Love is Blind is probably the show for me right now that I watch in terms of reality TV. It is a show that if you've never heard of it, I don't know how because it's gotten quite famous now. But they take, let's say, for example, 20 singles. Men and women, 20 men, 20 women, something like that. You do this show where you date people from behind a wall for like a week and a half. And you're trying to determine if, quote unquote, love is blind. That without seeing the person and all the things that maybe will get in the way of your dating life when it comes to the superficial, like how someone looks, how someone dresses, all those kind of different things. They're trying to see, hey, you could fall in love with somebody without ever seeing them. And you're actually also not really supposed to know so much about some of the other aspects about them, like money and things like that, though sometimes that does become a factor. And then the goal is that eventually you two will fall in love behind a wall after a week and a half of talking, decide to get engaged. Then you will then meet up after you've agreed to get engaged to come together, meet for the first time in person, and then live together for a month to determine if you will indeed go forward with the marriage. It is a wild concept. The fact that it's done 10 seasons shows you just exactly how much this show has become super popular. And I'm all in. What's cool about this show is, to me, it goes to all different cities and all different towns and parts of the country, which I think is actually super interesting because the sensibilities and the issues that come up in these relationships are very different. You know, politics has become an issue in certain seasons. Again, race, gender has become issues in different seasons. All different things become issues given where the geographics are and given the people on any given season. So I'm all in, man. I'm always all in on this show. This year they're going to Ohio. I'll be honest, no disrespect to Ohio. I kind of was hoping, the rumor was Boston was going to be the city, and I was really excited for Boston. The word is that it's going to be Columbus, Ohio. That was the rumor because they did a casting call for Columbus. When they did the announcement today, they just said, hello, Ohio. I don't know if that means they expanded it beyond Columbus and maybe Cleveland's involved or other towns are involved, but we do know they will be in Ohio for this season. Going to the Midwest. Still should have some fun, interesting dynamics there. I've actually never been to Ohio, so I'm curious to see what the people of Columbus are like, what the dating scene is like in Columbus, and what mess comes about. Because boy, does the mess happen. Because you're there for two things. You're there for the pod version of the show, or the pod era of the show, where you do the first 4 episodes where they're behind the pods and they're behind the wall and they're dating and they're managing, love triangles and love squares and love pentagons. I mean, it is a crazy, crazy situation. And the mess that comes with that. But also you see beautiful love stories that happen. You actually end up really rooting for people. Oh my God, these people, because what happens in the show is, because it's not the superficial, you're dating someone from an app or you're seeing them at a bar, you're behind a wall and you have no TV, no nothing. All you're doing is dating this person. It speeds up the connections that happen. So these people are like on national TV telling these strangers things they never told other people about, things that they're learning about themselves. Like they make these extreme connections. Like the love be real in some of these connections. And there are actually a couple of marriages that people have been married and they've stayed married. Of course, there are a lot of divorces. That's a part of this too. But like you end up saying, okay, that part of it is great to see. Not just the mess, but also like see like actual love stories for them, to the point where now you want to hope that they stay together because you fell in love with these people standing behind the wall, like, pouring their hearts out into what they want out of their life and what they want out of a partner. It could be a very beautiful thing. And then it gets a little crazy by the time they leave that, and then it becomes a situation where it's like, all right, well, who's gonna stay together? What did this person hide from the other person that they didn't know? Like some people may not have a job that they didn't say. Some people may have lied about this. Some people may have lied about that. Some people may have parents that aren't involved, that don't want to be involved with this, or are really upset at their kids for going through an engagement without telling them in secret and doing it behind a wall. Like, it becomes an absolute mess. It's one of those shows where I say, give it a shot for one season. That's all I say. One season. Give it a shot for one season. Let me know what you think. If one season is all you need, if you want to kind of get the feel for what the show is about, I'm obsessed with it. I am hooked with it, and I'm addicted. So I gotta watch every season they drop. But give it one season, see what you think, and then come back to your boy and let me know if you like Love Is Blind. And if you are, then let's talk. Because I nothing I love more than breaking down Love Is Blind and giving all my different, my different theories about what's going on and all that stuff. Bob in Nevada in the chat saying, EJ, a friend of mine from India, had an arranged marriage. They were still together for 45 years. See, and it's funny is, that is what, again, those are the kind of stories that come up. Like, people who are on the show will be like, yeah, I came on because my parents got an arranged marriage. And that seems crazy now, but they're still together. So why not try to date somebody behind the wall for a week and maybe we do fall in love? Like, that's what actually makes the show interesting, is people mention these, like, reasons why they're doing this. A lot of them say it's because I went the conventional way of dating and it didn't work, or I'm too superficial and now I want to try to do something different. But again, people can say this kind of thing, but when you're actually put under this pressure cooker and you're put on national television and you actually have to go through with dating someone you've never seen before and then getting engaged to them and then actually seeing, are you actually really ready to change as a person? Are you ready to accept this person as your future husband or future wife? And there's a lot of challenges that come with it, and they follow it all. The cameras are always there. So I'm always a big, big fan of this show. I'm really excited that it's coming out again February 11th. So I guess, I'm doing kind of fast math off the top of my head. I guess Love Is Blind will be on while I'm still doing 40 Days and 40 Nights. I think I'll be towards not even towards the end. We'll probably be like almost a little past halfway there. So there'll be a Love Is Blind episode of 40 Days and 40 Nights. It's not going to be the whole episode. I'm not going to do, an hour or 2 hours of Love Is Blind. But we're going to talk about Love Is Blind on this show because this is what I've been waiting for since last season. Last season was in Denver, Colorado. It was a complete mess. No one got married. the people they put on this show were, some of them, insane. And it was beautiful. It was crazy. Beautiful television is harsh. Is maybe not the fair thing to say. It was very entertaining television. Let me say that. So let's see what Ohio has to do. Let's see what they bring to the table. I will definitely be seated when Love is Blind Season 10 returns. That's going to leave you here, man. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. Of course, again, all these episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights gets posted on our podcast network. New Generation Podcast Network is where you'll find these episodes along with all the other podcasts. Of course, we stream this show live on YouTube, where you can also find all the episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights. You also obviously watch live as well, where we're streaming currently on IG Live Action EJ and on X EJ_Stewart. Like I said earlier, be sure to follow also the show accounts on X New Generation Pod and on Instagram New Generation Podcast. We got day 12 coming up tomorrow. We hustle through this journey of 40 days and 40 nights. But I want to thank you guys again so much for rocking with me. It's been such a fun journey so far. We'll see what tomorrow brings, but considering the world of sports, the world of pop culture, there's always something happening out here. So again, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me again. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you in the morning, 8 a.m. sharp. I'm EJ Stewart. Take it easy.